Go for beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
Hey, what is up, everybody? Happy hump day! One and all, Derek Gunn, Rob Ellis. It is Wednesday, June 14th, Flag Day, as a matter of fact, in the United States. Derek Gunn, how are you, my friend?
Good, and you? Who started all of these days, man?
Well, Flag Day's a real one. That's
I know, but I'm saying when you think about it, there's National Sunday, National Daughters Day, National Grandparents Day, National Pet Day.
National
It's like every
day.
day there's a day now. I'm like, when did this start?
Yeah, well, it's another way for somebody to monetize it. I'm sure that's got to be. It's got whenever you drill down to figure out why something is something, there's usually some bread at the end, if you know what I'm saying. So
you got cards for all these days now, so you know the cards companies are making money.
Oh yeah, there's no question about that. What's up, Brett? What's up, Forrest? What's up, Jim G, Mr. Taz, Father Sean? What's up? I always mess it up. Twiz to Jigga. I don't know. Mike is right. Chris D, our girl from Portugal. Tyler, William. What's up, everybody? Hope everybody's doing well out there. We got a little Sixers news. They have hired another coach. They've hired Rico Hines, who previously worked with Nick Nurse. He comes aboard as an assistant coach. He is a player development coach, which is good. This team needs player development. He's a guy who runs a lot of the off-season stuff, Derek, out at UCLA, where a lot of the pros will work out in the summer. He played at UCLA from 97 to 02. So he's really well known. He works regularly with guys like James Harden, Steph Curry, Paul George, among them. But he is a big-time player development guy who commands a gym, according to Nick Nurse. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
So they now have three coaches in the fold that will emphasize defense. There's three coaches that are going to, which is something they desperately need. As much as this now is a three-point shooting league, you got to have some teams that play defense. I mean, look at Boston, you look at Milwaukee, Miami. Those teams play defense. You can play both ends of the court of the floor and still be successful.
Yep.
And this team was sorely lacking in its defense, especially perimeter defense. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to see that we see a constant theme in terms of the message they want to get across. Well, one of the definitive messages they want to get across is we must be a better team defensively. So I like that.
Yeah, I like it too. And I think the development part has also been lacking with this team. They might draft somebody, but other than Maxey, you don't see a lot of development. That's for sure. So that's good. Also, in addition, how about those Phillies, man? The bats have exploded, Gunner.
Hey, that was – correct me if I'm wrong. Would you say that was the most complete game that you've watched them play this year?
That's a good point.
Zach Wheeler was the Zach Wheeler of old.
Yeah.
He was hitting his corners. His breaking pitches falling off the table. They couldn't touch him. Offense, Schwarber starts the game with a bomb, and it just kept steamrolling from there to the point. You know what, Rob? It was nice to finally see another team use a position player to pitch an inning.
Yeah,
it wasn't the Phillies.
Yeah, it was a laugher. Phillies don't have a lot of laughers, but that was a laugher last night.
No.
You even saw the opposing team making really dumb mistakes, like the Corbin Carroll kid in left field. He catches a fly ball with one out, catches it, and I'm watching, and he goes. I'm like, he's going back to get his hat. What's he doing? And credit to JT Realmuto, he read it perfectly. He really did. As soon as Carroll turned his back to pick his hat up, he went and he scored easily. But it was a really boneheaded play for a guy who's really good. It was a boneheaded play.
And then you see the Arizona manager in the dugout just staring at him like,
what? And the pitcher's like, oh, come on, dude.
What are you thinking?
Yeah.
Of course, the kid comes back later in the game. He hits a home run, so all is forgiven.
Well, he's really talented. He's really
special.
Talented.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it looks like, excluding, the previous night where you had the ugly bullpen game. The bats are really coming together. Schwarber had the leadoff home run to set the tone. Turner, everybody. I mean, there were you go through the lineup. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 guys with multiple hits throughout the lineup. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, you being a stats guy, correct my numbers if you're wrong, but we have been screaming at this team for being so putrid with runners in scoring position. The last 2 games, they're like 15 for 33.
Yeah,
with runners in scoring position.
Yep, 9 for 20.
That's a drastic improvement.
Well, the fact that they're putting – think about this. The fact that he had 20 guys in scoring position last night tells you need to know. So they did a really good job. We'll get into the Phillies. Scott Lauber is going to be joining us coming up at 1 o'clock. Excited to have Jeff Mosher on. We haven't had Mosher on in a long time, Gunner. He's going to be popping on at 12:30 with us. And we had his compadre on, last week? We had Adam Kaplan on last week. But Jeff and Adam Kaplan do an awesome job with Inside the Birds. Really, really well done. And Jeff's covered the Eagles for a long, long time. So,
yes, he has.
Yeah. So, look, I think we're at a point now as we're about a month, what are we, about 5 weeks away, 6 weeks, whatever we are, from camp starting, where you sort of assess things, right? You take a step back and you look at what's happening here. So we'll go heavy into that. We'll go further into what Doc Rivers had to say on Bill Simmons' podcast regarding really everything. Joel Embiid, James Harden, state of the team, sort of trying to power wash the process away from people in the organization who may have still been buying in. We'll get into all those kind of things. We talked about it yesterday, but I think there's a lot more to dive into when it comes to that for sure. Golden Knights, Gunner, they win the Stanley Cup last night and really just hammered Florida. Florida was banged up, but credit to Vegas. They smashed them last night.
The fact that Florida even got to the finals when you realize after that game last night, the coach reveals how many players were being held together by rubber bands and super glue just to get on the ice for Florida. Dude, hockey players are different. We talk about how tough football players are. Football players can't come close to hockey players in terms of
they're a different breed.
Mental toughness.
Oof.
This is, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later as well, but it is ridiculous. You were talking about Doc Rivers and Big Sills. What's up, Big Sills? Big Sills posted something a moment ago. I'm going too fast here. Where he said, "There we go. There you go." You heard that Doc Rivers said on Embiid, Joel needs to make his teammates around him better. It's exactly what we've been saying. Yeah. But for Doc to reveal, all of this stuff, normally when it comes to the coaching fraternity, you go out gracefully, because you never know where your next job might be. And Doc was not malicious in his comments.
No.
But Doc revealed a lot more than I thought he would in terms of his tenure in Philadelphia. And for him to say something like that about Embiid, I'm sure Embiid, being as sensitive as he is, will take this personally. But we all knew it. All of us on the outside looking in, okay, you're a dominant player, but what are you doing to make your teammates around you better?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. He mentioned off the court, like, in other words, go out to dinner with the guys, spend some time with them. That's a leadership move. And we talked about this yesterday. It doesn't mean you have to go out and party and, be in making it rain like James Harden, but go out, take your guys out to dinner, spend some time, have them over the house, whatever, do those kind of things. And the other thing that Doc revealed is when he first got here, there were times where he had to say to Joel, look, you need to play tonight, because he was so ingrained in the load management, sit out entireties of seasons, through the process part, that he had to sort of, break that mold.
Right.
He talked about Harden, kind of doing things, especially towards the end of the year, his way rather than the way that Doc wanted. Now, keep in mind too, some of this is also, Doc is not an accountability guy. Doc doesn't want to look in the mirror a lot of times. Right. So I'm just throwing that out there, but I do think what he said was revealing, because this isn't just us speculating about this now.
No,
this is the coach saying these kind of things.
Basically, he confirmed all of our speculations is what he did.
Yep.
And like I said, if you listen to his tone, it wasn't malicious.
No.
He was being honest, And
I give him props. He did answer. I mean, he didn't duck it.
Exactly. And now that I don't know if Harden and Embiid will work in Philadelphia, to be honest. As much as I feel that this team will be worse without Harden, I don't know if Harden and Embiid will work in Philadelphia to get them to where they want to go, which is beyond the second round. I don't. If James is going to play his game and he tried to do what the coach wanted him to do for much of the season. All of a sudden, he just decided to play his game. You just decide you're going to play your game. That's not what a teammate is. Dude, everybody makes sacrifices for the overall betterment of the product.
Right.
James did it for much of the season, but from what we're hearing, he didn't do it when it counted most.
I agree. Look, I don't think it works together. I'm questioning whether it works with Embiid at this point. It certainly doesn't work with Harden. So we will get into it. I have real doubts. I'll put it to you that way. I have real doubts, Derek. All right. I wanted to hit you with this. And like I said, we have Jeff Mosher coming up at 12:30. 1 o'clock is Scott Lauber. We'll talk Phillies with Scott. We will get into the Sixers coming up at 1:30. Oh, by the way, 2 o'clock. Looking forward to this. We're going to dig into new quarterback wide receiver combos.
Yep.
Now we got 9 on the list, so we ranked them. Which one we think is going to be the most potent of the combos this year? Pretty good. What we mean by that is, for example, Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson. That's an example of new quarterback and receiver playing together. So we'll get into that at 2 o'clock. That's for sure. We'll do birthdays, movies, and all that. Question for you, and I want everybody in the chat to respond to this as well. What is the thing that concerns you most about the Eagles going into this season? If you could pinpoint one, I'll give you multiple choice, and you could, if you want to do a write-in vote, Derek, you can too.
Okay.
Is it simply the history of the league where it's so difficult for teams that either get there and lose or get there and win to get back again? Is it that, which is a real history here? It's no joke. Is it the fact that the Eagles lost too much talent, particularly on the defensive side? But if you want to throw offense too, there was too much talent lost. Do you have your doubts about the young players stepping in? Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Jalen Carter, who's going to play a big role, possibly Cam Jurgens or Tyler Steen.
Mm-hmm.
Would you throw that in there? If not, if you want to fill one in with one of yours, what would it be? For you, what concerns you the most?
Navigating a much tougher schedule.
And I'm sorry, the schedule was the other one I forgot. I apologize. Yeah.
Navigating a much tougher schedule / health. I have to include that because navigating the schedule entails a healthy team.
Mm-hmm.
That was a rarity to see this team as healthy as it was at the end of last season. That doesn't happen. The average NFL team has to go through almost 70, 75 players a season just to get through an NFL season.
Right.
This team brought back all of its regulars for the biggest game of the season. I would say for me that would be my biggest concern. I think offensively, the league has shown, and the Kansas City Chiefs have shown, that you don't need a dominant defense to win a Super Bowl. If you have a potent offense, it can cover up whatever deficiencies you might have on the defensive side of the ball or weaknesses you might have on the defensive side of the ball. We've seen the New England Patriots do it. We've seen Kansas City do it. So I think offensively, they are talented enough to outscore just about anybody they're going to face. But when you're playing a much tougher schedule compared to what they cakewalked through last year, there are concerns, and of course, staying healthy. Mm-hmm. I think that combination to me is the biggest concern at this point.
All right. I mean, and the only reason I didn't throw injuries in is just you can't account for it, and frankly, the odds are you were so healthy last year, it's probably not going to play. I hate to say it, but it's probably not going to play out the same way. So, yeah, I hear you with that. I would say my biggest fear, Derek, is the youngsters and whether or not they can step in there and get it done.
Okay.
We know what kind of college career Nakobe Dean had. He was incredible. But he is on the smaller side, and there's some questions there. Jordan Davis, I just doing some research leading into today's show on him, just kind of digging into his game by game. And I know it's a little bit unfair because he plays D tackle, but there's not a lot of impact plays there, and I don't just mean sacks. I mean tackles for losses or anything like that. He's going to be asked to do a lot, and it's not going to be, hey, we only need you for 15 snaps a game or 12 snaps a game. He better be in shape. He better be ready to roll. And he better be, that guy. The gloves are off this year with him because you moved up to get him in the first round. If you ask me who I feel more confident about, I feel way more confident about Jalen Carter than I do Jordan Davis. But I don't know that Reed Blankenship is that guy, and I don't know that Sidney Brown is that guy if Reed Blankenship isn't that guy.
Right.
And we're going to have to see about Juergens and Steen. I feel pretty good about both, but I don't know for sure. So I'm in the I don't know about the young kids mode with this team for me. We'll get some of the survey here. Our defense will be better this year. I have faith in the Pups. Okay, he believes in them.
Okay. All right.
That's fine. Father Sean has an interesting one. The new assistant coaches.
That's a good one.
We don't know, right? As good as we feel about Brian Johnson, as good as, Sean Desai has a good reputation around the league. I don't know. And there's a couple position coaches that are new. What's Patricia's role going to be? How's that going to work? There's a lot of questions there with this. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Chris D says, look, tougher schedule, losing critical players, and the new DC will have some growing pains naturally. And then Barbara Carroll says, the schedule and the history of the league, I actually have little worries. Okay. All right. Look, I get the confidence. This is a talented team. There should be a lot of talent. Squad Mass has an interesting one, Derek. How about the running backs?
That's a very good one.
The health of the running backs.
That's a very good one. And he put out there, every team has injuries. Yes, but some teams are more decimated by injuries than others. And he didn't listen to the full statement. I said the fact that they were able to navigate last season and be as healthy as you've ever seen in the last game of the season is phenomenal. You cannot overlook that. That is such a rarity in today's football over the last 10 years. Can they do that 2 years in a row? Because look at what happened to the Eagles. Look at how many players the Eagles lost in 2017, and they still won the Super Bowl. But the next year they come back, they are blasted by injuries. As a matter of fact, the next 2 seasons, one year's the secondary, the next year's the offensive line, blasted by injuries. You look at that 04 Eagles team that went to the Super Bowl and lost to New England. Very next year, without, besides T.O. losing his mind, they had players dropping like flies, front runners. It happens. Every team goes through that. And I talked about a stat several times this year where a couple of seasons ago, Jacksonville had to go through over 90 players just to get through a season. That messes with continuity, matchups, everything that you can consider. The Eagles training staff and the doctors did a phenomenal job of putting this team back together when they needed it most. You don't know if that's going to be the case again.
Yeah.
You don't know. That's the biggest unknown other than predicting schedules. Are they good enough to repeat? How healthy are you going to be throughout the course of this season against a better clientele of opponents?
Yeah.
That's a huge unknown factor.
That's a great point. I mean, they were insanely fortunate last year in the way that shook out.
Right.
I mean, think about it. Every starter started the Super Bowl. I'd love to go back. I'll try and dig in on that tomorrow. But if I could go back and see how many teams that applied to that got to a Super Bowl that had basically the same starting lineup that they had opening day. Yeah. I bet you it's, Derek, maybe 5%, if not that. If that. Yeah.
Yeah. If that.
That's crazy fortunate. I think there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. There's no denying the schedule. The only problem with the schedule argument, and it definitely looks tough on paper. But we know that for whatever reason, sometimes teams just fall off.
That's true.
Teams have major injuries. They lose a quarterback, whatever. And all of a sudden they go that way. Now, that also works the other way. There's teams that we're looking at like that's an automatic win that could really be good. It's hard. It's hard to like if you look at their schedule right now, I would say New England, I think, is going to be an okay team, but that's a tricky game. I think Minnesota could be. I don't know. I don't like what's going on with them defensively, even though they added Brian Flores. I just don't.
Right,
there's personnel over there that aren't happy, and I don't know. Tampa's going to stink, and I don't think that's changing. Washington, they're kind of hard to gauge. They feel like a mediocre team right now, but if Sam Howell plays well, look out for Washington and look out for the whole division if he plays well. And then you start getting beyond that. I don't buy the Rams. I think that should be a win, but it's not easy to go to the West Coast.
Yeah.
Just how good are the Jets going to be? They could be good. They could be really good. If Aaron Rodgers gets this offense down, quick and the defense plays the way we think they're going to play, they're going to be good. Miami should be good, but Miami is completely contingent on Tua staying healthy.
Absolutely.
Dallas should be good, and Dallas has owned the Eagles. You have to go to the Chiefs, Buffalo, San Fran. At Seattle, even when Seattle's not good, that's a hard place to go. So, I think this is going to play out kind of like we think in terms of what teams are going to be good. I do.
I agree with you. The question mark is how healthy will San Francisco be at quarterback? Washington, who emerges as the quarterback, and the play will dictate a lot of their success and failure. What are the Giants going to look like in year number 2 under Brian Daboll and Wink Martindale?
What happens with Saquon?
Yeah, what happens with Saquon? Although an official came out today and I thought gave Saquon his props. To kind of diffuse that situation. Arizona, I think Arizona's a mess. The only games on this schedule that I would pencil in as automatic wins, and obviously you don't take anything for granted when you consider that a Saints team that was going nowhere came in here and won in their backyard last season. The only Tampa Bay, Arizona, and the Rams are a tricky one because they were so beat up by injuries last year. Cooper Kupp, they lost Cooper Kupp for the latter part of the season.
Stafford too.
Stafford, they lost. So you're getting the Rams earlier in the season. The Rams defensively, I don't think are going to be what they were a couple of years ago when they won the Super Bowl, obviously. So there's like 3 games where I say, okay, I feel extremely good about those 3 games. Outside of that, you never know in this league, man. It's one thing to have confidence, but you got to go out and do it. You got to go out and do it.
And I think, every team in every city is probably doing the same thing that we're doing and looking at certain areas and, and picking every little thing apart and whatnot. All things considered, this team's in very good shape. When you think about how the continuity that's going to be returning on offense, a runner-up MVP at quarterback, still arguably the best offensive line in football, 2,000-yard receivers, a really good tight end, running backs who, if they stay healthy, this thing could be kind of interesting. This rotation they might have, and it's more on defense, but they're still returning a lot of talent on defense too. They brought back 3 guys who were double-digit sacks. A secondary, at least the cornerbacks are both back from last year, Slay and Bradbury, and Maddox too. We should always throw him in there. So, look, there's a lot to be encouraged about, but it's fair to have your doubts. It really is. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you're an Eagles fan, just to have some questions going into this thing. But I think there's a lot of different ways that you could go with it. But yeah, like you said, you laid your point out really well. For me, it's just some of the younger guys stepping up and whether or not they're capable of doing so. All right, let's get a time. Go ahead.
Real quick, you also have to factor in the primary players on their defense. Or the core of the core leadership on this defense are all 30 plus. Brandon Graham's 35. Fletcher Cox is 32. You have Darius Slay is 32.
Yeah.
Who's the other one?
Brandon Graham, Slay, Bradbury, Cox. These guys are all getting up there on that side of the ball. 32 to 35. Yeah.
Those are core leaders on your defense. How much do they still have left in the tank? People were down on Darius Slay the second half of the season, and rightfully so. Brandon Graham had the best year of his career in terms of sacks. Fletcher Cox was Fletcher Cox. He was good at some points, disappeared at other points. And they're all a year older, a year wiser. But how does that equate into the overall scheme of the defense?
Yeah.
I like the nucleus. I like the mix of young and old. But how will it mesh with all of these new coaches on the defense as well?
Yep, fair question.
It's unpredictable.
I just think early, like I've been trying to preach patience with the defense early, and I think that's where the mode we need to be in.
Yep.
All right, let's hit it. We'll come back. Jeff Mosher's going to join us from Inside the Birds. We'll talk to Jeff, 1 o'clock, Scott Lauber. You don't want to go anywhere. Let's smash that like button, friends, if we could. We appreciate it. He's Derek Gunn. I am Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. I want to tell you right now, you kind of hungry? Got some hunger pains right now, some pangs of hunger? How about Bravo Pizza of Havertown? Yes, thrilled that they are a part of the squad. They are a part of JAKIB Sports. They are a part of Sports Take as well. Bravo Pizza of Havertown. Yes, been going there forever. They've been family owned since 1985. Alex and the crew are in there just putting together unbelievable food options for you 7 days a week. Food is fresh. Flour's flown in from Italy. They have 20 different styles of pizza. They have slices to go if you're not up for an entire pizza. You just want to grab a quickie here there at lunch. They have what I love about this is you name it, they make it. Basically is the ultimate like accommodation in terms of what kind of pizza you want. You call up, get it specialized your way. They're happy to do it, but they don't just have pizza. They have fresh pasta, sandwiches, wraps, wings, salads. Bravo Pizza of Havertown is also committed to the community, fundraisers for charities, schools, Little Leagues, where the proceeds go to those organizations. You could follow them on Instagram and Facebook for daily specials and promotions at the Bravo Pizza of Havertown. They're located at 1305 Westchester Pike in the Manoa Shopping Center in Havertown, Pennsylvania. Give them a call right now, 610-446-3810. 610-446-3810. Bravo Pizza of Havertown.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again?
You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back, everybody. Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. That's the gun. I'm Rob Ellis, hanging out with you on this Wednesday. Excited, always excited to talk a little football with our next guest. Does an awesome job covering the Birds, along with his partner, Adam Kaplan. He is the host and co-founder of Inside the Birds. You can check them out, InsideTheBirds.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Jeff, Geoffp Mosher, Mosher, Jeff Mosher. What's up, Jeff? How you doing, bud?
Rob D. Gun, what's up, my friends?
My man, it's been too long.
This man has more side jobs than he has primary jobs. He's coaching. He's at graduations. I can't catch up with the guy. I thought he was avoiding me on purpose for a while.
He is. He didn't want to tell you, Derek, but he is avoiding you. Yeah.
But I remember what it's like when my kids were little, man. They stretch you all over the place. And this dude, I mean, if you could claim mileage, dude, you know, for just being a father, you'd be a wealthy man.
if we could all claim body mileage, right, through on our taxes, where we get reimbursed for, because I feel like I put on 10 years in the last 3 months, and my body feels like it.
Yes, I feel you, man. I hear you. Jeff, so a lot to get to. I want to pose this to you because I asked Derek in our audience in our chat section a little bit earlier, but for you, it's more of a generalized question when it comes to this Eagles team. But if you had to pinpoint one area that concerns you most going into this season, what would it be?
Oh, that punter battle is really on my mind. No, I'm
No,
just
that's real, man. Don't even start me with Stippos. All right,
No, don't get him hot, man, about
oh
Stippos.
my God,
it's real. Somebody's got to get hot about the punter, so I'm glad Rob does it.
Yes.
Listen, I think it sort of goes without saying that this is a completely remade defense up the middle, right? Yep. From your starting tackles to your starting linebackers to your starting safeties, and the way the Eagles build their team is from front to back. It's funny you asked that, Rob, because Adam asked me the same question on the podcast. So that's my biggest concern. And he thought for sure I was going to say safety, just because when you look at the overall talent there and the distinguished talent, Sanders okay, but nothing special, right? But I didn't, because the Eagles aren't built around their safeties. They're built from bottom to top to bottom, inside out. And they've got a defensive tackle. They put a first-round pick in last year who couldn't play more than 8 snaps in a row without really losing his technique, and then he got hurt. Yep. And now they're once again sort of going into the at least offseason part camp without a true natural backup, because they didn't have Linval Joseph last year until later in the year. And then, of course, Jalen Carter is going to step into, they hope to Javon Hargrave's spot, but we don't see rookie DTs get 12 to 15 sacks a whole lot. And again, he didn't play a ton of snaps also at Georgia because of their rotation. So because it all starts up front, and because we saw at times even last year that you could get them up the middle, I think that's the biggest concern right now is what are you getting up the middle of this? Because those linebackers, no matter how good Nakobe Dean is, and no matter how fast or quick Nick Morrow is or Christian Ellis, if they're not clean, right, they're smaller guys. They're not clean. They got offensive linemen in their face. It's going to be bad defense. And so that's why what they've got up front has to come through better.
Great point.
Most, how concerned are you about the defensive leadership on this team when you look at their age? Fletcher Cox, 32, Brandon, 35, Slay's 32 now. Brandon had his best season career-wise in terms of sacks. Slay tailed off in the latter half of the season. Should age be a factor when we start looking at the leadership on that side of the ball?
Well, normally I like a few guys who've been through some wars, right? To be on the team because of leadership. I mean, age becomes a factor in how you're building your team. You're old at defensive end, so with BG, so you got Nolan Smith, right? Yeah. Little old at corner. Would have liked to have seen them get a corner a little higher than 4, but look, I get what they do. So and they wound up getting a safety that I've railed about no safeties in the first three rounds for years.
Yeah.
But they will eventually. They did sign Greedy Williams, right? They did put a lot into the rookie free agent at corner, so maybe they hit there. But I like their mix of veterans with youth, Gunner. But I am concerned, and it's really more of a discussion for down the road, right? Is what are your plans if you have some major injuries at these spots because of ages? Because you have depth in numbers, but I don't know if you have depth in talent.
Right.
That's a good point, Jeff. I want to circle back to your initial answer with Jordan Davis, because we were talking about him a little bit earlier as well. In one vein, I get it. He's a rookie. He didn't play a ton in Georgia. The ankle probably set him back. He had the head injury as well. All that has to be taken into account. But you really look at it, there's not a lot of impactful plays when he was on the field. And I just don't know right now. I can't be down on him after last year because they had a ton of depth and he didn't have to do a lot. But I feel, I said this earlier, a lot more confident about Jalen Carter for whatever reason than I do Jordan Davis. Where do you stand with him, and what do you expect in terms of snaps and productivity?
Well, I get why you would say that and I agree, because Jalen Carter, is built like a defensive tackle, a 3 technique type, a 5 technique. He doesn't have to make wholesale changes. He's not a guy who, outside of the pro day and everything, throughout his career struggled with weight. All you're worried about with Jalen Carter is mental, focus, coachable, good teammate, right? So the natural talent should transition very well to the NFL. Jordan Davis is a guy who has just almost otherworldly athleticism, that should manifest itself into some great talent if coached correctly, if the diet is correct, if the conditioning is correct. That's all I'm starting to get if, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say the guy can't be a good player. I'm just
Right.
saying I think his drafting was more of being blown away by what he can do at that size, which very few human beings can be, than like 4 years of unbelievable college production. He did produce, but it was also on a line with so many other guys who did produce. And again, not playing that many snaps and struggling with the weight, and then seeing how that hurt him last year in both can't play too many snaps in a row. Then he got the ankle injury. Now we've been told he came back in great shape, that he's been coachable. He's a great kid. He's got the head on his shoulders. So like you, I don't dismiss it either, right? I sort of be more optimistic about what he'll be. But I do think that if you go through the first round picks in Eagles history, right, especially online, go through years where a guy was picked in that 10 to 15 range like Jordan Davis and the team didn't go to the Super Bowl, far more scrutiny, right? Like a guy like Broderick Bunkley got raked over the coals, right, for not being much of a producer as a rookie because the team had a scratch and claw to make the playoffs. Same thing with some other guys. He kind of flew under the radar and didn't get as much criticism because they were able to overcome it.
Yeah, good point.
So as we perceive Davis's growth, would you consider it an extreme disappointment if he's not playing a minimum, I'm saying bare minimum, 30, 35 snaps a game this season?
Boy, you know, when you say that, knowing that he played like, you know, at his best 15 to 20, right, but not even giving you great 21. It doesn't mean every snap he gave you was great, right? That seems like a pretty big jump. But right now, as we sit here today, Gunnar, with them not having a guy like Linval Jones, they didn't draft. The closest thing they have to someone who could fill that spot right now would be Christian Ellis's brother, Noah Ellis, right? The guy who tried to make the team last year and didn't. He's 340 pounds. So now, again, I think they proved they can go out and get that guy pretty easily if need to be, but just without having that guy that you know can go ahead and occupy that role, it's a little bit of a difficult projection for either, for the player or the state of the interior line.
Yeah. Jeff, how about Nakobe Dean? And again, maybe this falls into something that's sort of a bigger picture question. Is it hard to judge Georgia guys because there's so much talent there that they don't have to play a lot, that during the regular season they're killing teams? And you know, I don't. That's a bigger picture. I'm all over the place.
Listen, that's a great question because it's a question I've started to ask some guys around the league, you know, personnel people, and there's really no exact science to it. But if you want to use an example, we know Kirby Smart from Georgia, right? He came from Alabama, and for quite a while, Alabama had this reputation of doing the same thing, putting a lot of guys in the NFL. And of course, there have been some great hits, right? But there have also been some pretty big misses, not because the talent was there, but because they came into the NFL and it seemed like they were already like damaged or worn out. I mean, there are a couple of linebackers going back in the day from Alabama, some safeties who didn't pan out, a couple of corners, some D linemen. We saw here the offensive lineman that Stoutland worked with, whose name's escaping me, Chance Warmack.
Chance Warmack
is a guy who didn't play as well in the NFL nearly as well as Alabama. But they also have a big hit rate. So, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of guys in Georgia that hit. But if you just go look so far, it's too early. But you'd have to go back and look. How did Devontae Wyatt do last year? Right now, he's best known for shoving referees, right? Who are some of the, I don't know how.
Walker. Jacksonville reached, in some people's estimation, taking him where they took him.
There you go. You know, the guy, you said Trayvon Walker. There was who's the other linebacker? Quay something whose name is escaping me right now.
Yeah.
But so I think it's a question that doesn't have an answer yet. We have to see kind of down the line how, because there have been such an influx lately. You know, DeAndre Swift came from Georgia, great player,
but he was in a loaded backfield where he didn't have to be an every down guy.
Exactly.
But I think we've also seen the smaller linebacker excel in the NFL. You know, whereas DNs are getting smaller, the linebackers also are getting smaller and quicker. You know, it used to be we were so used to, if you weren't a 6'3" to 6'5" linebacker, 265, 270, you didn't turn your head. But now these guys 6'1", 220, 6 foot 220, 215, and they're Pro Bowlers. So many of them are Pro Bowlers now. So what he lacks in terms of experience right now, and talk about in Dean, I'm just hoping he can find a way, Desai can find a way to utilize him and have him be that disruptive force that he was at Georgia. But as we know, you know, when you look at college players' numbers, a lot of those numbers are inflated by inferior opponents they're playing. Here, the worst team in the NFL has Pro Bowlers on it. They all have their little techniques and tricks on how to control certain players. So he's got a whole lot of little nuances he's got to learn to be that player that he hopes we would be. And hopefully his coaching staff can get the best out of him in that regard.
Yeah, I would think so. Again, he you guys know, he's not really a downhill linebacker, side to side guy. But obviously great instincts, great intellect. But let's be real about this. TJ Edwards had a really good year last year for the Eagles, right? So can Nakobe Dean play at a better level than TJ Edwards played last year? I don't know. That's a question that's got to be. It's going to be hard because at least for Eagles media and fans, we haven't really seen a linebacker play like that maybe since like Jordan Hicks' second year, and that's actually quite a while away. And that didn't last as long. He would wind up getting hurt, and then they wouldn't give him the money that he got from Arizona, which was amazing that he got. So, it's sort of like a wait and see thing. There's one thing that I'm tantalized by, and I know that they did this a little bit in OTAs. I didn't see it, but I was told about it. And that was using Nolan Smith in a little bit of a stacked linebacker role. So not the edge rusher, but sort of using him like a linebacker, which he did a little bit at Georgia. And if the Eagles, who pride themselves on being very, analytical and forward thinking, if they can sort of get out of the mindset, they don't have to, by the way, because Nolan Smith might be a great edge rusher. We'll see. But if they're really trying to get the next like Fred Warner, like a gem, Nolan Smith is said to have the kind of skill set that would translate really well with the long arms, the speed, the athleticism to be that kind of linebacker, a 3-down linebacker who can defend the run. He can cover. You can blitz him. He can be everything the way Fred Warner is in San Francisco's defense. But, the Eagles always want to take a guy like that and make him an edge rusher, and you can understand why. But they're running an entirely different defense the last few years. We've seen we have to talk about the Eagles defense way differently than we ever have. Overhang players, 5-2 fronts, 5 techniques, 4 eyes, things like that. And maybe with Sean Desai, I don't know, maybe they'll look at Nolan Smith and say, we can really make this guy into 4, 5, 6-time Pro Bowl linebacker that way.
Isn't that the misnomer about him too, Jeff? Like that he can't play the run? He played the run very well in college.
He did.
I think people just assume size, that he's just going to be, not that this is a bad thing, but like Hassan Reddick, where you just almost exclusively use him as an edge guy. It seems to me if he can hold up physically, he can do a lot more than that. No?
Yeah. What happens to guys like him, Rob, in college is there will be some tape of a pulling tackle coming over and flattening him because he's, you're 230 pounds versus 320 pounds.
Yeah.
So it's a battle you're going to lose a couple of times. And so the question will come, can he really defend the run? But everything I was told was that despite his size, he was a willing run, a tackler and good run defender.
Hey, Jeff, I think one of the key storylines to really keep a close eye on, as you guys will, is this relationship or this so-called vague relationship between Darius Slay and Matt Patricia. Slay was asked the other day,
Derek.
He said cordial. What the heck does cordial mean? To me, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of forgive and forget. Now, Darius okayed the move, but still, I think that's one thing that a lot of pundits, especially national people coming in, are going to be trying to watch this and probe this day in and day out about that relationship.
Yeah, and I don't know if I were to judge it like a referee, I would think that the onus is on Matt Patricia to come to Philadelphia and slow his roll and adjust and learn from his mistakes, not Darius Slay. Because Slay went out and proved that Patricia was wrong about him.
Right.
Patricia went out and proved he was a very bad head coach, and not just a bad head coach, but not a leader of men, right? And then he went out and last year and was forced to be the offensive play caller and didn't exactly shine in that role for New England either. So if there's one of these two guys that needs his image repaired and by doing so needs to kind of get with the program a little bit, it ain't Darius Slay.
No, it's a great look. I think the Eagles played it smart. Look, you could debate whether or not you bring him in or not, but at least they approached Slay, I thought, beforehand, showed him that respect. And to Slay's credit, he didn't, maybe he balked, but when they got to a point where he said, okay, fine, do it. I mean, so at least they're going to be able to get that done. I wanted to ask you about Christian Ellis, who I thought when he got an opportunity last year, I know you and Adams talked about this on Inside the Birds, really looked good, not just special teams, made a couple plays also. Is he a legitimate candidate in your estimation to be more than just a special teams guy?
From what I understand, he has an opportunity here. They obviously signed Nick Morrow, who had a nice year in Chicago, made a ton of tackles, has played the position at the NFL level for a couple of years now, so he has a leg up. Very interesting thing on Nick Morrow. I don't know if a lot of people realize this, and it still shocks me to this minute, but he got no guaranteed money. Like,
really,
almost everybody who signs a contract gets a little guaranteed money, right?
Yeah.
He got none, as far as I understand.
Huh.
So that doesn't exactly scream a whole lot of confidence.
And he must have had no options either.
And I don't know why you would even sign that early if you had no. I mean, yeah. But either way, but it's still. I mean, you sign with the Eagles for no because you look at the landscape and say, well, I should be able to make my base salary because I think I'm making this team.
Right.
So that'll be an interesting competition. I think we've seen quite a bit throughout the years that how the season starts at linebacker isn't how it always ends. The one thing about Christian Ellis and the opportunity he's given is that he's 233 pounds, which for an Eagles linebacker is pretty good. Yeah. And he runs really well at 233 pounds. So the one thing that we also have to remember, though, even though he had all these picks in OTAs and looks good, is that the guy was cut from the practice squad, a couple of times before being back. So it's not like the Eagles 2 years ago had some great transition plan for him to eventually be a starter. Just the way sometimes things work out, though. So he'll be getting a chance to compete, and we'll see if he can do it. The one thing you guys have seen this so much. How often do we see a guy play really well in the OTAs and training camp, but he didn't get the starting job because he just wasn't the guy to start with, right? And then by, again, week 3, week 4, like TJ Edwards a couple of years ago instead of, who was it? Eric Wilson, right?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
What a
it was
disaster.
so clear in training camp. TJ Edwards was like really coming into his own. Even Davion Taylor, when he was healthy, was starting to play well. But week 1, it was Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton. Okay. And then all of a sudden things didn't go well. And all of a sudden TJ Edwards is in. And the way he played, everybody was like, how did you not start the season with this guy? He's clearly a better player. So it doesn't really matter how it starts. It just matters, what's the best combo. And hopefully they find it fast enough.
So Moshe, on the other side of the ball, there's not a team in the league that has a deeper stable of backs and interchangeable backs than this Philadelphia Eagle team. But I ask you this because I love to do this, and people hear what they want to hear. And I've used the term lead back, not feature back, lead back in this offense. So where we sit right now, from your perspective, who's the lead back in this offense?
Oh man, it's hard to think that DeAndre Swift is not the lead back. I mean, if you're just using, they gave up a 4th-round pick for him, right? So Rashad Penny was a 1-year deal with not a lot of guaranteed money. Kenny Gainwell is a candidate, but he's a 5th-round pick on the 3rd year of a deal. He did certainly supplant Miles there at the end in the Super Bowl. But if he was going to be the lead back, then I don't know that they would have went out and signed Rashad Penny and traded for DeAndre Swift. So when you put all 3 in a bucket and add Trey Sermon, you always read the tea leaves, right? You always read the paper trail. DeAndre Swift would seemingly be the guy that they want to be the lead back of this.
Yeah.
Did you guys think differently on that?
No, it feels that way to me too, Jeff. I posed this to Gunner yesterday. I'll ask you just on that note. Let's say Swift has a killer first series or whatever. Are they riding him the rest of the game? Are they almost pitch counting him because of the injury history? And same goes for Penny. Or do you just say, I'm not taking this guy out? He just lit them up in the last series. How do you handle that?
So I'm like chuckling inside at the question because like I spend a lot of time on the Inside the Birds podcast making fun in a playful way of the sort of no rhyme or reason to certain guys getting carries. Like Boston Scott, we talk about all the time. There are times where Boston Scott has taken the first carry of a game, and then you haven't seen him until the 3rd quarter. Right. So I joke that there must be on the sideline spinning a wheel, and then wherever Boston Scott, all right, get him in the game. I cannot is Boston Scott a 3rd down back? Is he a goal line back? Is he a 1st down back?
Is he a Giants specialist?
Back? Is he just a Giants killer? Like, I don't know. They just throw him in 3 times a game, and I'm like, how did the script call for that 2nd and 3 for him to get? So I don't know, but I would think that they want to preserve DeAndre Swift. So they have enough bodies. And it wouldn't shock me if he went out sort of like that opening game last year when he had that 60-yard run against the Eagles and looks like a beast. But then sees series 2 if Kenneth Gainwell's in. Because right now the only thing I really think I know about this is that I think DeAndre Swift's the lead back. And I think that Kenny Gainwell right now is probably still your 2-minute drill, 4-minute drill at the end of the game back.
Jeff, I said to Rob yesterday, I'm somewhat surprised that Boston Scott decided to come back here. Now, granted, they got him for a bargain basement price of $2 million. But you mean to tell me that there's not another team out there where him and his representation are thinking, we can get the same money somewhere else, but you will get more reps, which would probably enhance your marketability and financial ability in 2024. I'm surprised he settled so quickly to come back here knowing he was going to be last man on the totem pole, so to speak.
Gunnar, I am surprised for 2 years in a row that the Giants did not offer Boston Scott $1 more than whatever the Eagles offered him, and just sat him on the bench all year. We're going to pay you that money just to not kill us twice a year. Because 2 division games a year is pretty important in the NFC East, right?
Exactly.
Nobody's won this division 2 years in a row in 17 years.
Yep.
That's how important 1 division game is, let alone 2. But no, I am surprised a little bit. But then, I mean, take a step back. As much as we have seen Boston Scott fill a role and do nicely and kill the Giants, there are 100 Boston Scotts in the NFL, right?
True.
So if anything, the Eagles might value him more than other teams and pay him more than other teams were willing to pay him.
Yeah,
I feel like every team feels like it's got a Boston Scott somewhere on its practice squad or in its depth.
Well, he's also hurt by his numbers are not going to be great because he's been in backfields with, where they're going to spread the wealth a little bit too.
Yes.
So it's not like he can leverage that in an open market. Jeff, last one from me in all seriousness. And this is a more bigger picture than just Sippos, but they didn't at least appear to do a lot special teams wise to make changes. Michael Clay comes back. Sippos at least seems like he's the leader in the clubhouse at punter. Everybody likes Jake Elliott. It goes without saying.
He's your punter, Rob.
Have they done enough in your estimation here to improve that? Because, you can make a case there's a lot of areas they didn't have to do a whole lot of upgrading in, but that's certainly one of them.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's a good question. Have they done enough? I mean, certainly I feel like with what they've got at linebacker, Ellis is going to make this team either as a starter or a reserve. So he will start off on the special teams unit. If he starts, then maybe that moves Nick Morrow to special teams, and that helps you there. Zach McPherson's actually a pretty good special teamer.
And Sean Bradley's healthy.
Yeah, Sean Bradley, if he makes the team, might just make it for that, right?
Yep.
If healthy. I was a little surprised they waived Andre Chachere so early in the offseason. And then same thing with the other kid they got from Seattle, Marquise Blair. That was a little surprise to me. But certainly Sidney Brown, if he doesn't start, will be probably an excellent special teamer just based on his college resume. If he does start, that pushes Reed Blankenship into a special teams role. They didn't start the year with some of these guys, right? So I think that naturally, just the way they added, they should be a little bit better. But I also don't want to absolve Michael Clay here. He's got to do a better job as well.
No question.
Is this a 14-win team again this year?
That's hard, D-Gun, man. Like when you got that, 5-game stretch coming out of the bye against Kansas City, San Francisco, Buffalo,
Seattle.
Dallas, Seattle, New York. That's tough. And honestly, while I think this team's going to be really good, this defense is a very, very big question mark. I mean, it just is.
Yep.
So until we kind of get an idea of how it's going to look and what Sean Desai is going to do, it's hard. They're going to be in a lot more, I think, shootout type battles against those good quarterbacks. But I certainly think they'll still be a very, very good team. And, if you want to tell me they're still the best team in the NFC, I'm not going to argue it. You can put them in San Francisco with a healthy quarterback, and then maybe people aren't going to like me saying this, but I do think Dallas is going to be pretty good this year. I thought they made some really good
they've owned the
offseason
Eagles,
additions.
Jeff. I mean, there's just it's real.
Yeah, I mean, shake it all up and pull out a name.
Yeah. I hear you. All right, Jeff, tell everybody where they can catch Inside the Birds with yourself and Adam Kaplan. You guys
everywhere.
Everywhere. Yes.
Everywhere.
All right.
Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, Inside the Birds YouTube channel. And Inside the Birds we're at Inside Birds on Twitter, though. It's not Inside it's at Inside Birds on Twitter.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Keep up the good work, Jeff. We appreciate you giving us a couple minutes, man. Always great catching up with you.
Always fun, fellas. Have a great one.
All right, Jeff. Take care, man. That is Jeff Mosher, Inside Birds. He does an awesome job. He and Adam. It is must-watch stuff. I will tell you that, Gunner. Good information there. We'll come back. We'll get back to football in a little bit. When we come back, Scott Lauber, the great guest, just continue. Will be joining us to talk some Phils as they are rolling right now, Derek. 8 of 10. 8 of 10, my friend.
Look at you gloating. Look at you.
I am a happy camper. It was a nice late game. I fell asleep I think in the 9th or 8th, whatever it was. Phillies were rolling, and I woke up and I said, all right, they didn't fall apart. It's all good. All right, so we'll do all that when we come back. Don't go anywhere. That's Derek. I am Rob. We're Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Let's talk about Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group, because knowing who to trust with your finances can be a tricky thing, that's for sure. But I found the right person, and the right person is Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group, whether it's retirement planning, 401k review, insurance review. If you have a small business and you're trying to get those employee benefits off the ground, it's another resource that Jim can help you with. I've said this to you before. What I really like also is if you're confused by something, if you're seeing a trend, if something's happening, you're wondering about something you invested in, he is just a quick phone call away. All right. I personally entrusted my IRA, my 401k rollover with Jim, and I couldn't be any happier. You will be too. Give him a call, 610-996-4751, 610-996-4751. You could also email him, Murray, MURRAY, .jim@principal.com. That's Murray.jim@principal.com.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
Score and save at Southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES, Eagles.
All right, we're back. Thanks for hanging out with us. We do appreciate it, folks. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. You can always check out our content at jakibsports.com or JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. All right, joining us right now, Philly's on a bit of a roll here, and we get a chance to talk to Scott Lauber, who covers the squad as well as Major League Baseball for the Philadelphia Inquirer. You can follow him at Scott Lauber on Twitter. Scott, welcome to the show, man. How you making out?
Guys, how are you?
Good, man.
Scott,
good to see you.
Good. I'm doing good. Derek's doing good. Phillies are doing
gloating.
good.
Phillies are winning. Rob's gloating.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm like a pregnant woman. I have that glow about me right now. Scott, they've won 8 of 10. They did have this slip up with the bullpen game on Monday, of course, but it wasn't the offense's fault. But Derek mentioned it, and they got a pretty complete game last night. Wheeler looked really good. The bats jumped on him right away. Schwarber sets the tone, but they jump on him early, and this is what we thought we were going to see, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right? We were waiting for them to get on a little bit of a run, a little bit of a roll. And I'd say 8 out of 10 qualifies, especially when the Dodgers are mixed in there, and good win last night against the Diamondbacks. So, I think what happened was they came out of New York. How about the Mets being 1-10?
What a
since
mess.
that series in New York? They swept the Phillies. They're 1-10. The Phillies are 8-2.
Yeah.
So what a reversal there. But because those teams looked like they were going in opposite directions when they came out of New York. But yeah, I mean, I think what's happened for me is they've gotten a good roll of starting pitching. And I think we all got a little bit distracted because Trey Turner's slump went on for as long as it did. And because it was, Memorial Day weekend and Kyle Schwarber was still hitting 170. And we all looked at each other and said, like, what's going on with the offense? Well, I kind of felt like the offense was going to come around at some point, whether it was June Schwarber, who showed up here as he always does, whether it was Turner finally playing like Trey Turner. You figured that was going to happen at some point. But what's really happened is they've gotten on a roll with their rotation. 3 good starts in a row from Ranger Suarez. 2 good starts in a row from Taijuan Walker. Zach Wheeler looking like Zach Wheeler again for an extended period of time. Even Aaron Nola, who has been way too inconsistent for my liking and for most people's liking, 2 starts ago took a no-hitter into the 7th inning. So they're getting better starting pitching, and they're getting on a little bit of a roll. And I think that those 2 things go hand in hand. And once the first part of that happened, we were going to start to see the results.
Scott, I think one of the big been runners. This team just can't move runners. But the last 2 games in particular, they've done an exceptional job in that area.
Yeah, I think, some of that has to do with lineup construction and batting order. And I generally think batting order is overrated, right? I generally think that we spend too much time worrying about who bats in what spot. But a long time ago, I covered a team that was managed by Bobby Valentine, a Red Sox team. That went off the rails. But one of the things that Bobby did say that made a lot of sense that year was it's less about the individual in each individual spot than it is about the grouping, kind of the whole. And I look at what the Phillies have settled on here in the last few games, which is Schwarber in the leadoff spot, followed by Turner in the 2-hole, followed by Nick Castellanos in the 3-hole and Harper in the cleanup spot. And I really like that grouping. It makes a lot of sense to me. Schwarber, for all we've talked about with the batting average and all of that, still gets on base. His walk rate is higher than it has been in previous years. For all the struggles with just getting hits, he's still getting on base. I like that in the leadoff spot. They think Trey Turner fits really well in the 2-hole, and it certainly looks much better than it has. And I like Castellanos in front of Harper as opposed to behind him. I really do. I think he's more comfortable in that situation. I think it allows for him to see more strikes to hit. He's an aggressive hitter, right? He's going to swing a lot. Better to swing at balls in the strike zone because they don't want to walk him to get to Harper than chase pitches out of the zone because Harper's either already on base or in the dugout and not batting behind him. So I really kind of like the way the grouping feels. And I'd like to see Harper up in the first inning as often as possible. I'd like to see him in the top 3. But you know what? Like, if your batting order works the way it should, he's going to get a lot of first inning at-bats batting in the cleanup spot, and he's going to do it with runners on base.
Scott, let's talk about Castellanos because, I mean, it's an amazing turnaround from what it was last year. 316 average, 361 on base, 502 slugging, 863 OPS. I mean, you look at the doubles. I think he's second in the league at 23. He's giving you some pop with 8. He's driving in runs with 41. I think he's tied for the team lead with Bohm there. I mean, he has been the silver slugger guy. He's been the guy you thought you were getting from Cincinnati. Is it as simple as guys lose their confidence, stuff happens, you start to tailspin last year, and he's just back to being more of who he is than anything else? Or is there a concrete, tangible explanation for this?
I think it is in large part just a matter of feeling more comfortable. I mean, it's kind of a mystery to me that it could take somebody as long as it took him to feel comfortable in a new place, especially when it wasn't the first time he switched teams, right? He went from Detroit to Chicago to play for the Cubs to Cincinnati to play for the Reds. He'd been around the block before, but I guess it's a little different here. We all know that. And I think it took him time to just sort of feel comfortable, feel confident, be himself. They did make adjustments in spring training, right? We talked about it. They moved him closer to the plate, further up in the box, things like that, because he's going to be a free swinger. And if you move him up and teams chase and teams try to pitch him away, when he chases, he's going to be able to get to that ball in the outside corner a lot better than if he was back further like he was last year. So they did make some changes, but I just think a lot of it is he's comfortable, he is at ease, and he's just playing. And I think he's one of those guys who's just better off not thinking about a whole lot of things, just going out there and playing and not feeling like he has to be the guy. And I don't know, maybe in a strange way, bringing in Trey Turner, another high-priced, high-profile free agent who's got to be the guy, and Harper's here, he's the guy, and Schwarber's got some of the guy, aspect to what he does. Having a lot of those guys maybe has taken some of the weight off of Castellanos' shoulders. He's not the new guy anymore. No one's talking about, no one qualifies him with $100 million slugger Nick Castellanos anymore. That was kind of a year one thing, right. And maybe he kind of feels that weight come off. Whatever it is, he's very much, as you said, the hitter that he was 2 years ago, the guy that they brought here to hit doubles in the gap and drive in runs and be an offensive force.
Scott, for the life of me, I can't figure out Aaron Nola. I really can't. Since April 21st, he's given up at least 100 a game. You talked about his previous start. He takes a no-hitter into the seventh. Then he comes back against the Dodgers, and they just tattoo his pitching. From your perspective, is it mechanical? Is it more mental? Or is it a combination of the two?
I'd say it's a combination. But yeah, I'm with you. It's a mystery. It really is. The inconsistency from one start to the next. It's difficult to deal with right now because there's not a whole lot of middle, right? Like he's either really, really good or he's not keeping you in a game. And so I think that, they need to kind of plot a little bit more of that middle ground with him. He's been so consistent over his career too. That's the other part of this that's puzzling is that, for the most part, he's been who he is throughout his career. He's had, years 2018, last year to a certain extent where he kind of peaks a little bit, but he's the same pitcher. And it's mystifying to me. I put some of it on the pitch clock. I really do. I think the pitch clock has affected some guys more than others. It is 3 months into the regular season. You would think that they'd be past this by now, but I don't think it's quite as easy for some of those guys. Like, just anecdotally, even before I looked at the numbers in the offseason to see, all right, who works fast and who works slow and who's this going to affect? Anecdotally, I remember sitting through Aaron Nola starts and thinking when there were runners on base, wow, he's really slowing it down. This game has has drawn to a kind of a crawl here. And that was Nola. That was what Nola was taught to do throughout his career. When guys get on base, when there's traffic on base, slow the game down, step off the mound, gather yourself. And I don't know whether it's because Nola was, drafted in 2014, came up in 2015, established himself as a star pitcher in this era where pitchers were allowed to do that sort of thing. I don't know whether maybe that era pitcher, it's a little harder to break the habits or it's a little harder to adapt to. I do know that it affected him in the first game of the season on opening day in Texas. It's affected him at points at other times this season. He's talked about it. He talked about it in spring training. He talked about having to figure this out. It's not going to change, right? So it's on him to kind of figure out how to deal with it. Right. What you saw against the Dodgers, the throwing out of the baseballs, that's a tactic that he has used to help himself slow things down. The umpires are onto that now. They're not going to let him do that as often. So it's just a cat and mouse game for him. And it feels like it's not so much with the hitter as it is with himself and with that clock. Like he's got to figure out, how do I get through this? How do I get my rhythm? How do I find my timing? how do I make a pitch I need to make when I need to make it without taking a second and stepping off the mound and thinking about it? And I think that's really given him some trouble.
Yeah, and that's the part too, Scott, on top of everything else. You're right. I mean, we're 3 months in. We knew it all off season that this was coming. We knew it in spring training, and he still hasn't adapted to it. And especially for a guy in the last year of his deal, it's, but there's so little starting pitching out there. Speaking of that, can you keep doing this for another month and a half with the 5th starter? I mean, I get everybody's in it with the 6th wild card or the additional wild card and all that, but man, this is ugly every 5th day.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been the Dave Dombrowski's sort of standard answer to this is if you've got your top 4 and they're going well, you can figure it out, right? You can get by. And I don't buy it. Like, I think a lot of that is Dave Dombrowski not wanting to make it sound like they're desperate for another arm in here, but they are. They really are. And it's not just what it does to you every 5th day, but what if something happens to one of those top 4 guys, right? Like, and what, I mean, even if it's only 2 weeks, and if it's longer than 2 weeks, if one of those top 4 goes down, you haven't had a 5th starter now for how long? If you have to suddenly look for a 4th at some point along the line. So there's no doubt in my mind that they are going to have to try to prioritize finding another starting pitcher at the deadline. But in talking to people, and it's still early, it's still, close to 6, 7, 8 weeks away.
Yeah, I mean, we're only at June 14th. I mean, you're probably 6 weeks around.
Right. So it can change between now and the deadline. But a lot of people around the game don't think it's going to be that active of a deadline for the simple fact that there are so many teams that are within 3 games, 4 games of a wild card. Plus you have the extra wild card now for the 2nd year in a row. Plus you have the 2022 Phillies who are on everybody's mind. Everybody looks at the 2022 Phillies and they see the team that got in as the 3rd wild card, got on a run, went to the World Series, and everyone who's within shouting distance of the wild card thinks that could be us this year. So the sellers are going to be the buyers are going to far outweigh the sellers. Starting pitching is already going to be, it's already a hot commodity at every deadline. I don't think there's going to be that much of it out there to go get. So I wonder how long before Griff McGarry is an option? How long before Mick Abel has to be considered as something of an option? They don't want to rush these guys, but they also, you look around the league and you see teams that are bringing kids quicker than ever. The Reds just brought Andrew Abbott up. He was McGarry's classmate at Virginia. He's 2-0 and hasn't allowed a run yet in 2 starts. So, you say to yourself, well, at what point do you have to maybe push a little bit more than you want to push on one of those guys, specifically McGarry, because he's older. He was a college guy. Maybe he's a little bit more refined. Maybe. When do you have to kind of push a little bit harder than you'd like just to get him up here and see what happens? Now, it is worth noting that Andrew Painter is throwing bullpen sessions starting this week. He threw one the other day, throws another one by the end of the week. But he's still got a long way to go because bullpens lead into live BP, which leads into simulated games, which leads into games, and he's still in the minor leagues and all that. If we saw him before August 1st, I'd be surprised. And if they do, if they are able to bring him up, what role does he play? But, between now and then, they're going to need something, and I think it might have to come from within, at least initially.
Scott, how do you see first base playing out? Working Harper out there, Clemens has done a pretty nice job, all things considered. Derek Hall looks like he's got to earn his way back in. How do you think first base works out?
I mean, I think that, I think that they're hopeful that Harper ends up taking down a lot of the reps at first base in the second half. It would help them in a few ways. It would give them a little bit more consistency at first base. It would enable Alec Boehm to move back to third base on a more regular basis and not have to go back and forth. And it would give them a chance to DH Kyle Schwarber, which I think they need to do once they can get Harper out in the field, because Schwarber has struggled out there defensively this year. He's just not moving really well out there in left field. So, and it also opens up your options at the deadline. Now you no longer have to hone in on specifically first base. Maybe if you could find a corner outfielder who could help you, that would be something you could look into, or something of that nature. So I think it opens up a lot of possibilities if they can get Harper out there to first base. He's not throwing the bases yet. It's still going to be a few weeks before that happens. But It's getting closer. He continues to work out there. I know he's not doing it just because, just for something to do. He's doing it with a means to an end to play there at some point. So I think that's still the plan, is to get him there after the All-Star break, and maybe that'll allow them to be more flexible with what they do in other places.
Am I the only one of the frame of mind? I don't want to see Harper playing first base. I don't want to see him throwing the ball. He's a professional hitter. I don't want to see anything that could possibly irritate that arm and have another setback where he's out for another month or two. This team is talented enough to win, and to win on a regular basis without having him in the field. I want that man at the plate every night with that bat. Am I the only one of that frame of mind?
No, not at all, which is why I think the throwing progression is going very deliberately. Because the last thing they want to do is put him in any kind of jeopardy where he ruptures the new tendon, the new ligament, and now he can't hit for you either. So, no, I think they're being very careful with it. I do think he's going to be ready. I do think he'll be medically ready to throw at some point this season. I do. I mean, I think he's getting closer, but I think they're being very mindful of the fact that they don't want to do anything to put the hitting aspect of it in any kind of jeopardy. I mean, they hold their breath every time he has to run the bases and he can't get that guard on his elbow in time. Every time he slides head first, their heart skips a beat. So, look, they're past a lot of that. I mean, I think they kind of have a sense that he's not doing anything out there on the bases to jeopardize anything. But no, they're not going to rush him back, especially to a position he doesn't know yet, and put him in any kind of harm's way.
Scott, let me ask you, you brought it up earlier. You look at the NL East right now and what's going on. And I know a lot of people just sort of have tunnel vision for what's happening with the Phillies, but it's pretty fascinating. I mean, the Marlins, I know they've lost 2 in a row, but they played really good baseball of late, kind of like the Phillies. The Mets have lost 9 of 10 and 2 in a row. And it seems like every night either someone's being told, hey, just get away from it for a little while, like Vogelbach, or a pitcher's getting tossed for having sticky hands. Like, it seems like it's a mess there. Let's start with the Mets. What's going on there?
It is a mess. Pete Alonso's out, and they are in a lot of ways a one-man offense. When Alonso is out, that offense struggles when Alonso is in the middle of the lineup, because they just don't have enough guys who do enough. Lindor is having a really, really strange year. I thought offense was their downfall last year, to be honest with you. I thought that was one of the reasons why the Braves caught them. They just didn't score enough runs, and they didn't do a ton to improve their offense in the offseason. They sort of hitched their wagon to Scherzer and Verlander, both of whom are, one is 38 and one is 40, and they're both great. They're both going to the Hall of Fame, but at some point, Father Time usually wins, and it seems to be winning right now with those two guys. They're not nearly what the Mets are paying for. They're paying them both $43 million a year to be locked down Hall of Fame aces, and neither of them have been that. So, I mean,
Their
we
numbers
knew that
are like
not
Nola's,
having,
by the way. Their numbers are like Aaron Nola's, similar.
They are, and again, older pitchers, right? Who maybe having some issues with the clock. I mean, I don't see every start that they make, but I know Scherzer's dealt with it, his fair share, and so. Again, it's a case where they just can't seem to get going. And, every time you think they will, like, I thought they played well in those 3 games against the Phillies. I thought the Phillies played really poorly, but I thought the Mets played well. I thought the kids, Alvarez and Beatty and Vientos, were giving them some energy. I guess that hasn't carried over past that series. So just absolute mess over there, and really interesting to see, if it doesn't turn around soon, how patient the owner is with the amount of money that he's spending on that roster. How patient is the owner? Does he try to make a change, whether it's with the manager, whether it's with the general manager? It's going to be interesting to see what happens if things don't turn around there. And with the Marlins, you mentioned they're playing really well. They have won a ton of one-run games, and their run differential is in the minus territory, which those are 2 signs that usually there's going to be some regression, that maybe you're playing a little bit over your skis,
over
and that
your
maybe
head,
your record's better than you are. But, that team's got a ton of pitching. Luis Ariz is hitting close to 400. He's really kind of helped transform their offense a bit. So, look, I think it's great. I think it's great that the Marlins are playing well. I think it's great the Diamondbacks are playing well. I think we've talked about this before. The National League needs more good teams. It really does. The American League is a deeper league with better teams from top to bottom than the National League. And the Phillies, to a lesser extent the Phillies, but the Padres, the Mets, should not be allowed to kind of coast along and struggle and know that, like, okay, we're going to make the playoffs because who's beating us out? There aren't enough good teams to beat them out. So those teams, if they don't play well, should have to sweat because you've got the Marlins and the Giants and the Diamondbacks maybe playing a little bit better than everybody thought they were. I'm all for that. Keep it going. I hope those teams keep it up, and I hope that there's a race in August and September, and I hope that some of those higher payroll teams that haven't figured it out and maybe won't have figured it out yet by then, can't just make the playoffs because there's an extra wild card and not enough good teams to fill that spot.
Scott, as much as it was enjoyable to watch the Phillies tattoo a really good team like Arizona last night, I told Rob earlier this week, I can't enjoy the Phillies night in and night out because every game is like, when is the bottom going to fall out? They jumped on Arizona last night. I'm thinking, okay, this is temporary because it happened in the first game against Arizona, and they let Arizona come back and win the game. And then you look at the rest of the schedule. They still have 2 against Arizona. A seemingly resurgent Oakland team all of a sudden is winning 7 in a row, which is crazy in itself. You still got the Mets, and the Mets give this team trouble as bad as they are. You got to play Miami, and then you got to play Tampa before the All-Star break. So I told Rob, I said, I can't form a definitive opinion of this Phillies team until we get to the All-Star break because of how inconsistent they've been all season.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I really do. I mean, look, they came out of New York, took 2 or 3 from the Nationals, and swept the Tigers. And I thought to myself, okay, that's nice, but like, do it against the Dodgers and you'll have my attention. So
We lose Scott?
Uh-oh.
No.
What happened?
We lost Scott. You got me, right? All right. I think he's back. There you go. Scott, we lost you for 1 second there. If you want to give us that again, just.
Yeah. No, so I was just saying, so that's kind of how I felt about, you play well against the Nationals, but it's the Nationals. You sweep the Tigers, but it's the Tigers. Then you get to the Dodgers, and I was like, okay, play well against them, win a series against them. You've got my attention, and they did that. So let's see how the rest of the Diamondback series goes. You've got your pitching kind of lined up now that you're past that bullpen game in Game 1. I think that was the reason why you were uneasy in Game 1 was because you had a lead, but you didn't know who was going to hold it. And so now you've got Suarez and you've got Nola, right? The last 2 in Arizona. And then, when I meet them in Oakland, it'll be Walker
Suarez.
in Game 1. You'll have Wheeler in game 3. They got to figure out the middle game, but it's the A's. You ought to really get through that. And then big week coming up at home with the Braves and the Mets. You mentioned the series against Tampa before the break, Miami before the break. So I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right to say, I'm going to kind of withhold a little bit some of the excitement that I might feel. 8 out of 10 feels good. They're definitely playing better. The lineup is clicking. As I mentioned, it's all tied to the starting pitching. Starting pitching is starting to put it together. So I really think that you're probably right to say that. And if you get to the break and you're still playing well, then you can sort of say, okay, let's buckle up because it's going to be a second half where they're going to be in this thing and that they're going to be competing for at least the wild card, if not, trying to knock on the Braves' door a little bit and seeing if they can make some hay in the division. So I think that's fair, but I do think that they're playing better. I do think that Dodger series went a long way, and we'll see what they can do over the next 2 days in Arizona.
All right, Scott, we appreciate the insights, man. Yeah, we're looking forward to checking out your work at certainly Enquirer.com and at Scott Lauber on Twitter. Scott, thanks, man. Appreciate you jumping on.
Sure
Take
thing,
care.
guys. Anytime.
All right, Scott, always good talking to you. All right, let's get a quickie in here, Derek.
So let me ask you this real quick while we're talking about the Phillies. Right now, they're 1 game below sea level.
Yeah.
And we've talked extensively over the past several days about who they're facing the rest of the way until the All-Star break. you are very, I don't want to use the word giddy, but exceedingly happy. They've won 8 of their last 10, and rightfully so. They beat up on the teams they should have beat. They got a little bit measure of revenge against this Dodgers team. They've split so far with Arizona. But as we sit here right now, are you confident that this team will be above 500 at the break when you look at the rest of the schedule?
Yeah, I am because I think the offense has found its footing. I think Zach Wheeler is back to being Zach Wheeler. Suarez, it took him a couple of starts after the injury, but I think he's looking like the Ranger Suarez they had last year. I can't sit here and tell you I'm convinced Taijuan Walker's turned the corner. He's had a couple of good starts. I need to see a little bit more.
Right.
It's really going to come down to Aaron Nola, and I can't imagine it keeps going this way where he has these implosion innings where he's giving up a home run every start seemingly. I don't think that's going to keep up. I think he's going to be better. I don't know that he's going to be excellent, but he's going to be better. I don't think Miami keeps this up. I think Miami's going to be good, but not this good. Yeah, I do. I think they'll be over 500. I do.
Okay.
I think
All
so. Yeah, I mean, one of the good advantages they have is they've been here before, and they started a season like this before. You don't want to keep doing it. You don't want to make a habit of it, but they've done it before. And I think they know now at least what it takes to get themselves out of that. And also, whether people like it or not, the offense just hums more when Schwarber leads off. So I think that they're hitting a pretty good place right now. I do. And Scott makes a good point about their starting pitching. And you know what? Really, all things considered, except for when you're asking them to give you, 9 innings, these ridiculous bullpen games. Yeah. For the most part, your bullpen's been pretty good. So yeah, I feel good about them.
Okay.
I do.
All right.
We'll come back. Let's.
I hope you're dancing and smiling at the break. I really do.
I do too. We touched on it a little bit earlier, and we got into it a little bit yesterday. But let's dive a little deeper into the Doc Rivers and what he had to say to Bill Simmons regarding the Sixers. We're going to hit the whole culture, Embiid, Harden, what they need, because Doc was pretty frank in some of the things that he had to say. So we'll get into all of that when we come back. Don't go anywhere. That's Derek Gunn. I'm Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take. Let's hit that like button, friends, if you could. Let's talk about Pro Action Restoration. Pro Action Restoration is the place that you reach out to. Look, let's face it. None of us want to go through fire or smoke or mold or water damage at their house, a property that they may own, their business, whatever the case may be. You're not sure what to do, who to reach out to. Well, they're the place that you reach out to because they're on call 24 hours, 7 days a week. I've gone through this personally. And when they came out to my parents' house, there was a lot of unknowns and a lot of questions. And they came out and they fixed the problem. They cleaned everything up. The crew was professional. The price was reasonable. It was a really good experience. And the great thing, one of the many great things about Pro Action Restoration is they are licensed, bonded, fully insured, and they've been serving the tri-state area for more than 2 decades. So the body of work is there. They will work in conjunction with your insurance company. And again, it could be water, fire, smoke, mold damage, you name it. They can handle it. Give them a call, 610-623-3760, 610-623-3760, or online at proactionrestoration.com. That's proactionrestoration.com.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake a mom. Mama go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
EAGLES, Eagles.
All right, welcome back, friends. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Derek Gunn, Rob Ellis hanging out with you on this Wednesday. Just wrap things up with Jeff Mosher and Scott Lauber. If you missed any of that interview and you want to go back and check it out, just go to JAKIBSports.com or JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. You can check out everything that we do on there. All right, let's talk some Sixers, Derek. We talked about it yesterday. We mentioned it, and we kind of got into it a little bit. Let's dig a little deeper. Doc Rivers was on the Bill Simmons podcast that dropped, I believe, yesterday. And, had a lot to say. I'll give him credit. He answered the questions. He didn't duck them. Some would say, part of that is Doc maybe not necessarily taking full accountability, whatever. That's a discussion for another time. He isn't here anymore, and it really doesn't matter. But let's dig into a couple things that he had to say. Let's start with Joel Embiid. One of the things he made a point to talk about, Derek, was the fact that he needs to be a better teammate. And it isn't just about on the court. It's about leading, which is an interesting thing. Everybody's personality is different. Everybody sort of ticks a little bit differently. I don't know if some of this isn't the fact that Joel didn't grow up playing the game, didn't grow up, in American culture. I don't know that's a viable explanation for it, but it's something the organization, at least it seems like what Doc Rivers tried to emphasize with him. Can you become that guy at this point, or is he who he is in your estimation?
He can, because the franchise, as we know it today, still revolves around him. Everything that they're trying to build is around him. Let's face it, there are some guys who are just not leaders. And that's not a knock against them. There are some guys who are more introverts than extroverts. And you ask them to extend themselves and to be something that they're not normally accustomed to being, and it's a little bit harder. Mm-hmm. But considering what he has done so far in his career, he's established himself as one of the best players in the game. He has established himself as the best big man as we know it today. Let's face it, the big man as we know it today is far from what we grew up watching. But he has established himself as the best big man in the game. He has finally gotten a monkey off his back in terms of being omitted from the All-Star from the MVP category. He's finally got that MVP trophy. So he should be comfortable in himself at this stage of his life, even if he didn't grow up playing basketball, even if he's always been a quiet guy. He seems to be more animated when he's on social media than he does when he's talking after a game or after a practice. You can learn certain traits and extend yourself. We all have inner traits that we never tap into. It could be little things, leadership things, being able to perform, being able to write, being able to do things we never thought we could, because we've always said in our mind, I can't do that. And we've accepted that. But if you push yourself, you can find that you can do certain things that you're not comfortable doing. I think at this stage, Joel is smart enough to realize that he is the face of this organization still. As mediocre as it is right now, and I'm saying mediocre about a team that still got to the playoffs, got to the second round 3 consecutive years. He is still the face of that franchise. So I think the onus is on him now to extend himself a little bit more and to be to come out of his comfort zone and to embrace his teammates a little bit more, get to know them a little bit better. And I don't know if he does, but I'm saying this is all based on what Doc is saying. Get to know your teammates a little bit more. You don't have to be out with them every night. You don't need to be in the club with them. If you're a homebody, understand that. And invite the guys over to play video games one night, play cards. Just come over, sit around and talk basketball, talk about life, in general. There's a lot of little things that fall under the umbrella of leadership that he can incorporate maybe a little bit better. And I think if he does that, I think that builds more of a cohesive unit, more of a bond between the guys on the court and off the court.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, too, if last year and yet another second-round failure doesn't wake you up and doesn't in some way force you to do something different, then, it's a lost cause. Like, I'm hoping he doesn't look at it and say, I won the MVP. I was out there dragging around one leg. What do you want me to do? I hope he doesn't view it that way, because he does have to get better. You can always get better in differing ways, and he's got to get better at what he does. The other thing that I thought was very interesting, Derek, and I think this applies to him, that Doc Rivers said was, I think the term he used was the organization is very media alert. And he wasn't saying it in a complimentary way, like, a PR person will get a coach or a player ready and say, hey, they're going to ask you about the play in the third quarter where you blah, blah, blah. That's what a good PR guy does. I think the Sixers and the organization in general care too much about what's said on social media, what the outside noise is. And I get it. It can get old sometimes, catching so much heat that these guys get, but that's part of the gig now in 2023.
Yeah.
That's something else I think he needs to grow up with and move on from, and not be so concerned about what people are saying rather than just what's happening with his team.
I mean, there was one point, I don't think it was this past season, I'm not sure, where he actually retweeted a comment that was on one of the local sports talk radio stations. Why? Did it bother you that much you needed to repeat it and respond to it?
Yeah.
There are players that say, what you can say about me what you want. Number one, I'm still getting paid. I'm still playing the game. It's water off a duck's back. It seems to me that he takes a lot of things too personal, and I think it affects his overall demeanor on the court, off the court. He's not shy about responding to things on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Why? And why hasn't anybody, Doc Rivers or anybody else in the organization, been able to get that point across to him and to get him to get away from that? I don't understand why. Can Nick Nurse do it and his coaching staff? That remains to be seen. Is that a part of Nick Nurse's, guidelines of success, is to stay off of social media? Don't let these things get to you. There's 100,000 lounge chair coaches out there and GMs out there that think they don't know more than you do and what we know in this organization. Duck Wins says, D-Gun, why are you bringing me in this debate? Was it you, Duck? Shame on you if it was you. Yeah. But let's face it, Rob, in all sports, there are athletes, and we see football players jaw-jacking on Twitter every day, with fans, fellow players, so on and so. Why? What do you gain by that?
I don't know. It's a no-win. That's the thing. There's an old adage, and I'm not saying everybody on social media is this, but the people who really want to come at you and troll you, you can't argue with an idiot because you're never going to win. You're not going to win. So I don't know if teams need to do a better job sort of educating these guys, counseling these guys, talking to these guys about it, or guys just need to be stronger willed, just to ignore it. But I think that's definitely something, man. And Joel is a chief culprit of it, where I think he listens to the noise a little bit too much sometimes.
Yeah, but see, Rob, what you just said, teams doing a better job of talking to and teaching these players the do's and don'ts, the highs and lows of you as a professional athlete. I think it comes down to today's generation. See, they grew up with all this social media stuff. Former players did not. They didn't have that. They could take it. Most of them can take it or leave it.
Right.
Today's athlete, let's face it, they're still everyday people in a lot of ways. They're put on a pedestal because of what they do and how much money they make, but they're still regular guys in the sense that social media has been such an integral part of their lives, whereas we lived by the newspaper back in the day. Now everything you want is right in the palm of your hand on a phone, laptop, iPad. You got to keep up with what's going on in the world. All of a sudden you see something about yourself and you have to retaliate. NFL players in particular, when rookies come to the league, every team has these symposiums for players. Stay away from this. Don't do this. Don't gamble. Don't get caught out with your boys in a bad situation. It happens all the time.
Right.
And same thing with basketball players. Look at Ja Morant.
Yep.
It happens all the time. You can't get through to a lot of these players of today's generation, man. Once they get fame, you can hardly tell them anything. That's why so many former players that I talk to in the NFL say, man, I'm not coaching today's player. Man, you can't coach these kids nowadays. You got to babysit. See, the guys that I'm talking to are guys that came up in our era. You were told to do something and you responded. You set your butt down until you stop pouting and you did it.
Yeah.
These guys now shut down their pout. They retaliate through social media. You know, you got to have individual psychologists to talk to a group of guys you shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
But that's the world we live in with professional athletes today.
Chris D brings up an interesting point,
Yeah.
Saying basically try to nurse Joel's leadership skills and social media content. Maybe Joel should spend some time with Jalen Hurts. I'd love for a lot of these guys to spend time with Jalen Hurts, man. I really do. I would love for that to be the case because my man is focused on all the right things. But
Jalen Hurts is a rarity. And like I said, he's an old man mentality in a young man's body.
Yeah.
There are not many 24-year-old Jalen Hurts out there. I think Joel needs to spend some time with Aaron Rodgers in darkness out in Oregon or Washington or where it is and get away from society altogether and just rethink about life. Put him in a dark cave with Aaron Rodgers or next to Aaron Rodgers for a week.
Oh, God. Let me read you what Tone just said. Tone, our producer. He said that if I'm being honest with myself, it's easy for us to say what they should do in certain situations. If you see a lie about you on social media, the urge to clear the air is so gripping. I get it sometimes. I get it sometimes too, Tone, but here's the problem. Let's just take Twitter, but it really applies to any social media. It's the wild, wild west. There's no regulations. There's no sourcing. There's no anything. So anybody can say anything and at you. Is it really worth your time and consternation and effort to reply to stupidity? Granted, it's not easy, but you do have to have some kind of discipline with it, or else when people see it gets to you, you're going to have just trolls piling on, and it becomes a whole thing. But I hear you. All right, let's hit a couple other things that
let me say this, Rob. I think the biggest problem is you get the trolls. All they want you to do is respond so they can say you got you to respond.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden wolves come out of the woodwork and they jump in on it to get you and players fall for this bait every time. And I don't understand why, because you make the situation worse instead of better. Because then you start dropping F-bombs and start cursing back and forth. All of a sudden you become a national story for the wrong reason because you got sucked into this stuff.
Yeah. You know what it's like? It's very similar to like if one of these guys and this is extremely unfortunate, but if one of these guys is out and some dude just has nothing to lose, wants to start a fight with them.
Yep.
If you acquiesce and you get into it with this guy, you either end up beating his ass and having to pay him, or you get arrested, or your name makes the headlines, and Joe Schmo, nothing happens to Joe Schmo, or if something happens, nobody cares about Joe Schmo. They care about you. It's along the same lines. I know it's not the same exact thing, but it's.
And then you, even if you were in the right, you are the one, because you are not just an athlete. You are a businessman working for a high-profile corporation. You have to go on social media and extend apologies. I apologize to my family, to the organization for embarrassing them. How many times have we seen, that's not my true character? I stepped out of line, yada, yada. Well, if you were in control of the situation, you wouldn't have to do any of these things. If you were smart enough not to get duped by these people who are just trying to suck you in and get a couple clicks, you wouldn't have to worry about this situation. See, that's what I said a little while ago. The old school players, they can take or leave social media. To them, it's just, a lot of it is a joke. To a lot of older players I talk to, it's a joke. It's an avenue to get if you're an ex-player and you're trying to start a second career, it's a great avenue in terms of getting your name out there and getting people to notice your product, whether it's a podcast, a line of clothing, shoes, whatever the case may be. But they also know, I'm not going to let these people suck me in like this. I got better things to do. Today's athlete doesn't see it that way, unfortunately. Maybe won't see it until they're done playing.
Maybe. And I'll give you another example. And this is more of an extreme for sure. But if you look at John Morant's situation, and here's the parallel I'm drawing. John Morant lost like $39 million because of his own actions.
Yep.
There wasn't any consequences for his buddies who were in the car with him or who were in these videos with him, because those guys don't have as much to lose as him. So again, is it fair? No, it's not fair, but life's not fair a lot of times. So you got to carry yourself a little bit differently, unfortunately.
Think about what you just said. Not 39,000, not 390,000. He lost $39 million. And he's 24 years old. How many 24-year-olds can even utter the words $39 million capability in my life?
Yeah. And there's just a lot more to lose. Yeah, there's just a lot more to lose.
You'll never see that money back.
Yeah. All right, a couple other things that Doc had to say. Talk about James Harden. Like, this is where, if I hear this and I'm Daryl Morey and I'm on the organization, I'm saying to myself, do we really want to bring this back? Like, it sounds like Doc tried to convince Harden this year that, hey, you need to be a distributor more, as opposed to just, controlling the ball as much as you controlled it. And it seemed like for a long period of time this year, Harden bought in. I mean, he led the league in assists, to his credit. And he's a good playmaker. But the way Doc explained it, it sounded like at the end of the year that James wanted to revert back to, what he was. First of all, that's not helping the team. Secondly, you don't have that gear to be able to go to every night like you used to. You can pull it out every once in a while, like you did in a couple of those games against the Celtics. But if that's the way he's feeling, and he brings up the whole basketball freedom after the season, am I bringing him back next year? Because he doesn't want to be in the role of distributor, it sounds like.
Here's what I would like to know, and we'll never know the answer to. Based on what Doc is saying, at what point did he notice that James decided, I'm going to go back to being a James Harden of old? And at that point, you can't reel it back in because it's too late at that point. Now, I said last week, and maybe it was earlier this week when we were talking about James Harden. You look at the James Harden that scored 42 and 45 points against Boston. He's the reason why they won those two games. Mm-hmm. They would have lost the series a lot earlier if it wasn't for James Harden. Scoring like James Harden of old. Yeah. Why wasn't there a better medium in terms of him being a facilitator and more of a scorer? Because, Rob, I saw way too many times when we talked about this, James Harden would drive the paint and look lost. He was, instead of going to the rack with the theatrics and falling down trying to draw the foul or taking the soft floater in the paint, he was looking to pass the ball.
Yep.
I wonder how much James was torn within to try to be everything to everybody instead of being true to himself and not being considered a selfish player. I'm not sitting here defending James Harden, but you asked him to be a certain type of player, which he tried to do much of the season, and the stats show he did, but you took away an element of his game, which hurts you more so than helped you, especially when your big man didn't show up night in and night out. So how much did James have that inner struggle of not being the James Harden he wanted to be, which cost this team more than it helped him?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to know unless you're behind the scenes, but Doc Rivers wouldn't bring something like that up if it wasn't an issue. So that's another thing, if you got to take into consideration if you're the Sixers here. The other part that he talked about that was really, really interesting to me was the whole culture thing. In other words, when Doc came in here, Elton Brand said to him, it sounds like Elton Brand said to him, look, there's still some people who are in like process mode here where winning isn't the ultimate priority. Right. And we need to weed some of those folks out. And Doc mentioned it was everybody from, equipment managers to people in the front office to blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
This is part of what happens. And again, I wasn't anti-process. I realized, so I'm not going to sit here and BS people. But that's something I think that needed to be taken into account when you do this. There becomes a losing culture, which isn't always, it's easy. It's harder to break. You know, it is, Derek. Like, it's harder to break lazy habits. I don't feel like getting up today.
Yep.
I don't feel like that. Yep. That's hard to break some of those habits.
Absolutely.
With yourself, with your kids, with, people around you, whatever. And it's also falls into the, hey, maybe I'll just sit this one out. I'm not feeling perfect tonight. And that's something else Doc talked about with Embiid, that he had to coax him. Hey, dude, we need you tonight. Like, let's go, man. Let's go, Joel. We need you to play tonight. That's something else that's a problem that has to be like fully extinguished if it isn't.
Yes. And that's why I said earlier, I don't know if, as much as I posed this question to you earlier, are the Sixers better with or without James Harden coming back? You gave your opinion. I gave my opinion. I think as I sit here right now, based on what Doc is saying, I don't know moving forward if the Harden-Embiid combination will work to get this team to where they want to go in the long haul, which is beyond the second round. I don't know. Based on what Doc said, I don't know if that's a possibility now, and which means you have to move on from Harden if that's the case. You're not moving on from Embiid. Let's face it, at least for one more year. You're not omitting Embiid from the equation. So what's the next step? You remove Harden from the equation. And if that is the case, again, based on your cap restraints, your inability to make significant trades and to take on gargantuan contracts, you're going to be a worse product than a better product. Plain and simple.
Here's the question I would ask. Are you, Derek, are in your estimation, are you willing to almost make this sort of a reset season? Like, in other words, all right, Houston's going to give Harden this, let him walk. We know we're only going to have $12 million to play with. Harris is rolling into last year. After this year, we get him off the books. Let's just see what Maxey is here as a feature guy with Joel. It's probably like the smart way to go, but I don't think they go that way simply because they went through so much with the process of losing, and I think they're in such go for it mode. I think it's a really fascinating thing to look at. I don't think they do it, but it's probably the best way for them to go.
To me, it's very similar to what the Eagles went through with Carson Wentz when they had that big cap number over their head. They had to just weather the storm for that 1 year with that big cap number, and then you come out blazing after that. And I'm looking at it now like the Sixers may just have to do that. They may have to weather the storm for 1 year with that cap number, the cap number hovering over their head, and then come out next year. And fans are just going to have to sit and begrudgingly just endure a season that could be an average season at best, knowing that hopefully this thing opens up to the point they can put a much better product together in 2024. But I also understand a lot of fans having a reservation because you just tortured them with this process for how many years? There's no guarantee that this particular brain trust can make that happen in 2024. Look at how many years of mediocrity the Denver fan base had to go through before they got it right. This team hasn't won a championship since what, 1983?
Yes.
Okay. So you've put this fan through a long, grueling, emotionally, shredding journey of trying to put a winning entity on the floor. Is one more year going to make that much of a difference considering what you put them through?
Here's the other thing you have to take into account with this. You could look at it two different ways with Joel Embiid. They probably don't want to waste another year of him. And also, where is he at with that kind of philosophy? In other words, does he want to go out there for another season knowing we're not going to ultimately be able to compete? Maybe the next year we will. This will be like 10 years for him. Does he want out at that point? It's tough. It's not easy. That question.
you may have to move Joel to make this after this coming season 23-24. You may have to move him to make the team better, as strange as that sounds. You know, he'll still be 31, approaching 32. Still got a lot of good years left in him. There's a team or some teams out there that will say, if we had a Joel Embiid, we would be a championship contender. They might give up what you're looking for to make your team better, as well as making their team better. You may have to move him to get to where you want to go. You know, and that's just the nature of the beast. It hasn't worked up to this point with him. We've seen him the last 3 years. There's been injuries that have held him back. It's a hand, it's a knee, it's a hamstring. It's something with him every year. And maybe you've gone as far as you can go with him. Maybe that's what it's come to, you know, and you're forced now to move on from him. You know, as much as you may not want to, you may have to. If things align the right way, draft picks, players, using him out there, dangling him out there as trade bait, you may have a situation that you just can't pass up because of an opportunity out there. I mean, so people should get ready for that as well.
Yeah, I'll give you a tweet that John Clark of NBC Sports Philadelphia put out about 2 minutes ago. He said an NBA league source tells him the desired outcome for the Sixers is still to do a deal with James Harden that makes sense in the short term and long term for both sides. He's coming back, man.
There you go.
He's coming back. I've thought it all along. Derek, you know, I never bought the Houston thing.
Yeah,
I think it's leverage for him. People talk about Phoenix. I think that's leverage for him. I think Daryl Morey's going to feed right into it, and he's going to come back. And it's going to be 2 or 3 years.
I was going to say, do you think James Harden, if he could get the max somewhere else, would consider coming back here for just 2 years? If he can get a 4-year max somewhere else?
No, but I don't think he gets a 4-year max somewhere else. I don't think that's there.
Okay.
Look, to me, it's a no-brainer. If Houston is going to get close to max for 4 years, I'm saying, James, good luck. Take care. Bye. Thanks. See ya. I don't know. I don't know how much Daryl Morey's inability, he's got the blinders on for him, plays into it. I don't know. Interesting. All right, let's come back and do some NFL. There's an update on Stephon Diggs, which we'll give you. We'll tell you the latest stop for DeAndre Hopkins. Rams make a move in terms of the cap. We'll give you the update on a couple running backs, quarterback competition, and we will get into our new QB wide receiver combos. We will rank them when we come back. Don't go anywhere. That's Derek. I'm Rob. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. I want to tell you right now about Flynn Tree Services. Yes, Flynn Tree Services is an experienced, licensed, and insured Pennsylvania tree services company that will trim or remove any unwanted trees off of your property. They are experts at trimming all types of trees, and they serve southeastern Pennsylvania, South Jersey, and northern Delaware. Flynn Tree Services specializes in tree removal, stump grinding, as well as tree pruning. You go to their Facebook or Instagram page for more information or a sampling of their work. Give Flynn Tree Services a call at 610-850-2848, 610-850-2848, or online at flyntreeservices.com. That's flyntreeservices.com.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
and save at Southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Back. We are back. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Let's hit that like button, friends. If you could, appreciate it. Thanks for hanging with us. Derek Gunn, Rob Ellis with you on this Wednesday. All right, Gunner, so let's talk some NFL here. Weird. I still don't know exactly what's going on here, but Stephon Diggs has returned to Buffalo Bills OTAs today. He is participating in it's mandatory, their mini camp. He's participating today. Yesterday, there was a lot of back and forth. It starts off with Sean McDermott saying we're concerned that he isn't here. But then Diggs people saying he was there, he took his physicals, but he wasn't out on the field. Josh Allen up there, basically saying, I'm sure we're going to have some more conversations moving forward as an organization, but we all have to do a better job of talking to him. I love him. We need to bring him in on the game plan, the whole thing. I mean, clearly there's some issues, but I guess the thing I'm trying to figure out is Stephon Diggs signed an extension in the offseason. You were unhappy with what's going on. Don't sign it. I don't get any of this, man.
I don't either. And Josh Allen came out and said that, I love him to death. He's my guy. I got to do a better job of incorporating him in game plans and stuff like that. I'm like, what? I mean, okay, you practice all week. You're in film rooms all week. You discuss tendencies with each other. What else do you need to do to appease this dude? He got his money. He's considered one of the best in the game. What are we missing here? I mean, it's like, here's another example of, does he feel he's not being nurtured enough in Buffalo? Let me tell you something, man. You give me $24 million, you don't have to talk to me the whole season. Tell you that right now. All you got to tell me is where you want me to line up, when do you want me to go, what route do you want me to run, and is the pass coming my way? That's all I need to know. I don't need to be nurtured. I don't need to be talked to every day. Yeah. I can go a whole season not talking to anybody. That doesn't bother me one bit.
I don't understand it. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to make him available to the media. I don't know that. I would guess they won't, but I don't know that. But I would love to know what's going on. Just, hey, Stephon, were you here yesterday? If you were, how come you weren't out on the field? And
exactly.
Josh Allen is saying how much he loves you and he feels like everybody needs to incorporate you into things. So what's the problem here, my man? I'd love to know what it is. I think they got a little headache on their hands, and they know he's too good to let go. And there's too many cap ramifications if you let him go also. So they're kind of stuck with one another, which is crazy. You know what I mean? To say stuck because the guy's talented. But he comes off very receiver-ish, very diva-ish in a lot of ways. And Dan's right. One of the reasons why they moved him out of Minnesota is because this stuff started. So I don't know, but it's
what a receiver that's a diva
shocking.
In the NFL. No,
I know
that doesn't exist, does it?
Hard to fathom. Yep.
No.
Yeah. So there's that little drama. There's always drama, but there's that whole thing going on. So let's hit a couple other things that are happening. So it looks like it'll be official tomorrow. DeAndre Hopkins will visit the Patriots. That one's interesting too, Derek, because it didn't end well with Hopkins and Bill O'Brien back in the day in Houston.
Right.
Now, he did put up big time numbers. So there was production, but they don't like each other all that much. But again, this could be a situation where if you're DeAndre Hopkins, you're like, I got to move on from this. You know, there's potential to have a good payday, play for the Patriots. I got to get over it. But we'll see if that plays into it at all.
Well, if Darius Slay can get along with Matt Patricia, can DeAndre get along with O'Brien?
Yeah.
If it's the right situation. I tell you what, if somehow, some way DeAndre did up in New England, hey, Mac Jones' arsenal of weapons just looks a whole lot better. He's got Juju Smith-Schuster there now. And if he had DeAndre Hopkins, that passing game, it looks a whole lot more interesting now than it did before. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. So we'll see what happens there. So the Rams, not shockingly, they're in cap hell. They have converted $13.9 million of Cooper Kupp's base into a signing bonus to free up some space. So they have a little bit more flexibility. You know, these kind of moves are only a matter of time. I think we're going to see a lot more of this.
Okay, but what are you doing with all the cap space now in June? Anybody you wanted is already taken free agency. Now, you can still try to fill the roster, as the Eagles are so adept at doing, with middle-of-the-road free agents that don't cost you a lot of money, that are still out and they're desperate to get back in the league. But you're not getting any primetime players with your cap space now. Why don't you address this back in March? I'm sure you can handle this back in March. Why are you doing this in June now?
Good question. Maybe there's somebody they're eyeing. I'm not saying they're eyeing Dalvin Cook, but maybe there's somebody who's still sitting out there that you like at a position. Maybe. I don't know. Or, you know, most teams like to have a little bit of something in the piggy bank in case somebody gets hurt during the season. Like that's how the Eagles could afford Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh. Maybe it's something like that. I have no idea. But speaking of contracts and negotiations, I thought this was interesting, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier. Brandon Brown is the GM of the Giants. And one of the things he said regarding Saquon Barkley, who we had Pat Leonard on Monday, and who covers the Giants for the New York Daily News, and Pat had the quotes from Saquon saying, I'd consider anything. I consider sitting out. I'm not happy with the leaks that are happening internally. But he also said we still have until July 17th. But what Brandon Brown said was, when you're dealing with someone who's mature like Saquon is, you can sometimes separate the personal and the professional part of it. Where I think sometimes teams and players and teams, both, and this is both parties can be guilty of this, are not able to do that. So I thought that was a pretty nice compliment that Brown threw out there to Saquon.
I think in hindsight of Saquon also saying that, hey, it's people inside the building leaking stuff, not me. I've kept everything close to the vest. I thought that's a perfect olive branch to extend to the player in terms of, okay, I hear what you're saying. You know, we respect you as a person as well as an athlete. Let's move forward. So that's the best way to any tension there is to, you know, get that tension to subside. I think that's the perfect answer. And I believe they're going to get something done before the deadline. We see this happen too many times with players talking about, I'm going to hold out, I'm going to sit out. All of a sudden, whether it's a day or two or a week or two before the deadline, both sides come to a meeting of the minds and the money is distributed and figured out in the cap. So I think they understand the value of Saquon. If they did not appreciate the value of Saquon, they never would have franchised him, knowing what the franchise tag would have cost him anyway. Right. Basically, that franchise tag was to make sure he understood that you were going to be an integral part of this team moving forward.
Yeah, and it's not like they can't, work on things while he's tagged. That's not the way it works. You can negotiate, and they'll get that thing done. So that was interesting. But stay on the running back thing. Dalvin Cook, I know there are a lot of people that are surprised he hasn't signed anywhere. He said, "Look, I'm not in a rush. I need to find the right situation here. I can't be jumping at the very first offer that I get."
I don't blame him.
There might be a part of him that says, look, do I want to deal with the aggravation at the beginning of training camp? Get myself a little beat up? Not really. I'll get myself in shape and I'll roll in. I know what it takes. So we may not see anything until camp starts or into camp for him.
I believe he will wait. I think Dalvin Cook realizes that he's one of the better running backs in the National Football League. He doesn't have to just take the first offer that comes his way. there's still a lot of time between now and the time training camp starts for whatever team. Most camps, some teams are starting like July 25th, 26th. So there's more than a month still for him to weed through potential offers. And I guarantee you, there's enough teams calling about his availability and interest in that particular team. So after you get those offers, you sit back and you weigh the best option for you. Number one, financially. Number two, does it put me in a position with a team to be a playoff contender? I don't see him signing with a team like Houston or Arizona or a team like that. I think he wants to put himself in a position to compete at the highest level as well as getting paid. So there's still a lot of time for him, a good 5 weeks or so for him to sit back and weigh these offers. I think it's in his best interest to get wherever he goes to be a training camp from day one to absorb whatever new playbook he has to learn in a hurry. When you think about training camp, not a lot of time nowadays in training camp. You don't get a lot of reps in training camp like you used to anymore to get a feel for the people you play with and play around you, the offensive line, things like that. You know, if you have a zone stretch type run game, you get used to that stuff. I mean, some of the offenses are similar. It's just the terminology is different, but still, holes open up differently, you know, and you got to get used to that stuff. So wherever he's going to go, if I was him, I would not be sitting out until like first part of September and then trying to do a crash.
Yeah, I wouldn't take it that far either. I'm with you.
You know.
Yeah. I you know what? I don't. Here's what I hope he doesn't end up with the Cowboys. That's it's one of the ones I'm hoping it doesn't go that route. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. All right. Beyond that, this is interesting. Bill Belichick was asked about the three best players that played for him. Now, I don't know if he did this strictly based on hitting each of the phases, but all right, pretty obvious the first two, right? He gives you Brady, he gives you Lawrence Taylor. I mean, if it's not those two on offense and defense, I don't know what we're doing here, right? But he went Matthew Slater, special teamer, who's been there forever in New England. I guess that's the route he went because there's a lot of other guys he could have gone ahead of Matthew Slater. No disrespect to him. He's been a great special teams player for a long time, but they're the three that he went with. I mean, no real surprise there.
No, I mean, Brady and Lawrence Taylor, arguably the best of their position to ever play the game. And you were afforded the opportunity to coach and be around both. Slater, one of the best special team players ever. There's a reason why he's had the longevity that he had. So no, I have no problem with his choices. And you're right. I wonder if he did it deliberately because he felt that all three phases of the game needed to be addressed. Mm-hmm. Could have very easily picked another offensive player or another defensive player. But the fact that he picked Slater and Slater is so highly respected, that's understandable. I have no problem with that.
All right. D'Amico Ryan says there is a full-blown competition in Texas in Houston for the Texans quarterback job between CJ Stroud, the rookie, and Davis Mills, who's been there now. I guess, like, to me, I would rather just bite the bullet and get CJ Stroud the practical experience right away. I'd rather get him in there and just get him as many reps as I can get him as a starter. But you also, if you're seeing in practice that he's nowhere near ready and you feel like it can stun him or turn out really poorly, then you gotta almost protect him against himself. So how do you think that one plays out, Derek?
I think Stroud comes out as the starter. I think fans down in Houston have seen enough of Davis Mills. They know what he is. He's okay, nothing great. And that's not to say CJ is going to come out of the gate blazing, but he is the future. And let's face it, you look at what Carolina's doing with Bryce Young. They've already elevated him to number one status, and he's barely got his feet wet in the NFL playbook. CJ, based on what we saw at Ohio State, has some incredible attributes in terms of arm strength, accuracy, athleticism, can take off and run, strong, big quarterback. But because he played at Ohio State, and you've heard me mention this time and time again, Ohio State very rarely turns out an upper echelon quarterback in the National Football League. Can C.J. Stroud be the one to break that mold? I think he's in a perfect position with a new head coach, new coaching staff, new collection of players that there's no pressure on them to win now. Any win that they get this season in Houston is a plus. Whether it's 4 wins, 5 wins, if they get one more win than last year, that's a plus moving in the right direction. And this young man gets a wealth of experience under his belt in terms of understanding the rigors of a 17-game season in the National Football League. So if I was them, D'Amico's trying to be as fair as possible about this. But if I was them, I would have named him the number one starter already.
I think it ends up going that route. I think maybe it's just another way to push the kid. Just, hey, man, nothing's given to you. You got to earn it. So let's see you earn it against the guy who's, been here. So we'll see. I'm with you. I think ultimately it's Stroud. All right. You ready to do our rankings?
Oh, let me get my sheet ready here.
Do this thing, man. Let's
baby.
do this thing. Yeah.
Woo!
So what we did was we put together a list of new quarterbacks and combining them with their receiving core and who will be the most potent duo out there. And Gunnar, you and I, you presented me with 9 different scenarios.
Yep.
But we could certainly have done a write-in vote, but I thought you nailed it with your 9. So we're going to rank 1 through 9. What you want to work your way up? Let's start with 1 on this one. All right.
Okay.
Let's start with the best. Okay.
All
right. You want first crack?
You want second? You tell me what you want to do.
I'll go first.
All right.
I really thought about that. I think we're going to be on the same page with 1. I think we're going to vary.
I don't know.
I think we're varying with 2 and 3. We'll
okay.
See. I have Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson number 1. I think Wilson is too good. I saw too much last year with him where you and I were playing quarterback for them, and the guy was still dominating as a rookie.
Okay.
I can only think with this guy. I think Aaron Rodgers has gone out of his way to drool over him and Sauce Gardner at the corner spot, but I don't think that's a coincidence. I think Aaron Rodgers knows, like, damn, I just got a stud, moving over here. So I'm going with those 2 first.
Okay.
You going with that 1?
No.
Okay. All right.
Nope.
All right. I'll go Derek Carr and Olave number 2. I think Carr is going to be great for Olave. Olave had another kind of not great situation last year and showed you how good he is. Now you get Derek Carr, who, for whatever he is, he generally puts up numbers, and he's had good connections over the years with guys. Of course, last year with Devontae Adams, but other guys as well over the years. So I like those 2 together. Jimmy G and Devontae Adams, speak of the devil, I think are going to be a nice combo too. I think they will. Jimmy G is going to stabilize things there if he can stay upright, which is a big if. But I think he and Adams are going to be a really nice connection. So I have them at 3.
Okay.
At 4, I go Dak Prescott and Brandon Cooks. I hope I'm wrong.
Okay.
I hope I'm wrong. All I know about Brandon Cooks is every year he gets 1,000 yards receiving, and every year he seems like he changes teams for some reason. But you throw him into that mix with CeeDee Lamb and some of the other weapons that Dallas has, I think he's going to be a real potent weapon for them. All right, so that was my number 4. My number 5 is Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley.
Okay.
I think Ridley, it's going to take a little time, knock some rust off, but you start watching about week 3 or 4 what Ridley and Lawrence are doing together. And it's not like they're going to be doubling him and tripling him, because there is Christian Kirk, there's Zay Jones, there's other options there that they're going to have to keep their eye on. Ingram played well at tight end for them last year. So I like them at 5. I put this group at 6 because I just don't know about the health factor for either. I put Lamar and Odell Beckham at number 6, simply because I have to see that Lamar can get through a year, and I got to see that Odell can get through a year. But if those 2 stay healthy, they could go up on that list, Derek, in a big way.
Okay.
Big way. I debated 7 and 8. I'm going to go 7.
It's tougher, doesn't it?
I know. I'm going to go 7, Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans, because simply put, I think Mike Evans is that good. I don't love Mayfield. I don't love the Bucks. But I know how consistent Mike Evans is, and I think he'll be good for Mayfield. 8, I go Justin Fields and DJ Moore. That one is another one that could move a little bit if we see that Justin Fields is more than just a runner. And I think he's owed this year to show us that he's more than a runner. And DJ Moore's a really good receiver who goes under the radar in the NFL. All right, lastly, I go Mac Jones and Juju Smith-Schuster. This is where Bill O'Brien could come in and really be a godsend for Mac Jones. And that offense really starts to get clicking and they get moving and here we go. But as I sit here right now, I don't know about Mac Jones. And I have my questions about Mac Jones. And I think Juju Smith-Schuster's a nice receiver, not a great receiver. So there I go Rodgers, Wilson, Carr, Olave, Jimmy G, Devontae Adams, Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley, Dak Prescott, Brandon Cooks, Lamar Jackson, Odell Beckham Jr., Mayfield, Evans, Fields, Moore, Jones, Smith-Schuster. That's my order.
We hit on 4 exactly the same way.
Okay.
4 out of 9.
Okay.
Which is not a bad percentage, which is about what I thought. I thought we would differ in certain areas because it's so hard. Once you get past 1, 2, and 3, it's hard to speculate on what could possibly happen.
Yep.
But my number 1, I had Jimmy Garoppolo and Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams has had 100 catches or more the last 3 years. It doesn't make a difference who's throwing him the football, whether it's Aaron Rodgers or his boy Derek Carr. Devontae Adams is going to get his catches. He's not the fastest guy out there, but he's the best route runner in the game. He's so deceptive in terms of setting up DBs. And if Jimmy Garoppolo throws it in his area code, Devontae Adams is going to go get it. So I think if Jimmy's healthy, Jimmy's going to put up incredible numbers, and Devontae is going to put up numbers that are expected of him, which is 100 catches and over 1,300 yards, which is what he had the last 2 years. Number 2, I have Derek Carr and Chris Olave. Okay. I think that combination is going to be lethal, but it hasn't happened the last couple of years, but I do think there could be a kink in the armor if Michael Thomas returns healthy. Michael Thomas is that big athletic receiver who could take some catches away from Chris Olave, but Olave is such a second-level deep threat. He's still going to be a viable entity in that offense. My number 3 is Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson. Aaron Rodgers, when you think about how many years he's been in Green Bay, he has never had a collection of pass catchers like this, nor has he had a speedster. Now, he had Devontae Adams for a number of years, but this kid, Garrett Wilson, is on another level. Here's why I couldn't put Rodgers at number 1 and Garrett Wilson. Rodgers has his buddies, Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb there. When in doubt, what do? You go to your safety valves. A lot of time a quarterback looks to his tight end. In this case, Aaron Rodgers is going to look to Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb because all he has to do is step to the line of scrimmage initially, look at them, and they already know what he's thinking. So that may put Garrett Wilson a little bit on the backseat initially. But Garrett Wilson, once they get up to speed in game situations, he's going to get his numbers. My number 4 is Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley. Ridley's been sidelined for 22 months. How much rust does he have to get off? Christian Kirk lived up to that big contract we all snickered about. What's Christian Kirk thinking about? Hey, wait a minute. I understand Calvin Ridley makes us better, but don't forget about me over here. Plus, like you said, you have Zay Jones, and don't forget about Evan Ingram, who is a quality tight end for them as well. So I do think Calvin Ridley is going to enhance that passing game. But it's going to be interesting to see how he divvies up the numbers between Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley. That's going to be interesting.
Okay.
Well, number 5, Lamar Jackson and Odell Beckham. The reason I could not put them higher is both of these guys now have injury histories hovering over them the last couple of years. Odell's coming off his second ACL tear, and Lamar's coming off missing significant time after last season. How long will it take them to get on the same page? I think those two can be electric if they can stay healthy. They also have Rashad Bateman coming back. They drafted Zay Flowers, and, of course, Nelson Aguilar is there. Mm-hmm. So, my number 6 is Dak and Brandon Cooks. I hope this does not pan out. I got a bad feeling that Brandon Cooks is going to open up this passing game and take a lot of pressure off both Dak and CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup for that matter. CeeDee Lamb is lethal in the underneath routes, but he's not very physical when it comes to the deeper routes. He can fly by you, but if you physical him up a little bit, he's not the same receiver. Brandon Cooks takes a lot of pressure off CeeDee Lamb. My number 7 is Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans. Mike Evans is another guy. Big target. Doesn't make a difference who's throwing him the ball. He's going to win most of the 50-50 balls. All Baker has to do is throw it up to him. I think they're going to be an interesting combination, but I do think Tampa Bay is going to lose more games than they win. Number 8, which we agreed upon, is DJ Moore and Justin Fields. I think this is the year we find out, is Justin Fields ascending to that next level as a legit NFL quarterback when you look at all the moves that Chicago made in the offseason. The thing with DJ Moore and Justin Fields is you can't rule out Darnell Mooney. You can't rule out Chase Claypool as well. Those are 2 quality receivers.
Yeah, they could get touches, yeah.
Yep. I just think DJ Moore helps them spread the field and gives them more options. And my number 9, Mac Jones and Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju, I thought he was going to really flourish in Pittsburgh. They let him go. He had a decent season in Kansas City, but as we see the way the offense is structured, you can put anybody in that Kansas City offense, and they're going to have a good measure of success. Juju walks into New England as the number 1 receiver until further notice.
Yeah.
And I do think that's going to help Mac Jones in a lot of ways. I don't think it's enough. I think New England needs to add another body. Basically Juju is replacing Jacoby Myers, who moved on. So if you had Juju and Jacoby Myers, I might have put them a little bit higher. But because Juju is being looked at as the featured wide receiver in this offense with Mac Jones, don't know how it's going to work out initially.
Yeah, that duo just doesn't scream dynamic. It just, could be good, but not explosive.
No. But we hit on 4. We hit on numbers 2, 7, 8, 9 exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the only one you surprised me with Jimmy G and Devontae that high. I don't doubt the back end of it. I had him at 3, so I had him pretty high too. But I don't doubt the back end of it. I just didn't think you throw Jimmy G ahead of your old guy, Aaron Rodgers. That surprised me a little.
I did it more so because of Devontae, more so than Jimmy G.
Okay.
We can say what we want to say about Jimmy G, but Jimmy G does not make a lot of mistakes with the football. He's been chastised for not being able to win a big game, i.e. postseason. But in the regular season, he's usually steady Eddie when he's healthy and on the football field. And you put a receiver like Devontae Adams at his disposal, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What more could you want?
No, I hear you. Run through your list one more time.
So my number 1, Garoppolo, Devontae. Number 2, Derek Carr, Chris Olave.
Yep.
Number 3, Rodgers and Garrett Wilson. Number 4, Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley. Number 5 is Lamar Jackson and Odell. Number 6, Dak and Brandon Cooks. Number 7, Baker and Mike Evans. Number 8, Justin Fields, DJ Moore. Number 9, Mac Jones and Juju Smith-Schuster.
All right, so we were the same 7, 8, 9, and 4. Okay,
yep.
Interesting. All right, that was fun. And there was enough movement that you're going to really be keeping your eye on these things pretty closely.
Absolutely.
In the NFL. That's for sure. So good stuff there. All right, let's get a timeout in, Derek. We'll come back. We're going to hit you with a bunch of different things. Weird movement in Oakland that's happening with the fan base for the A's. We'll update you on some of the injuries that these guys had. We hinted at it a little bit earlier in the NHL. These dudes are just warriors, man, on a lot of levels. We'll get into that. John Rahm, none too happy with what's happening with the PGA. Birthdays, movies, don't go anywhere. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. He's Derek. I'm Rob. All right, let's talk about Razor technology. Yes, Razor technology. IT infrastructure environments are more complex and heterogeneous than ever before. Consequently, teams struggle to respond to pressing issues with the speed necessary to promote positive business results. And the data that powers predictive monitoring and automation is left unexploited. Razor technology addresses this challenge with a holistic approach that connects every part of an organization's technology assets, enabling proactive and secure IT operations without sacrificing the agility that drives innovation. Razor technology automates monitoring and management to bolster IT teams that are feeling stretched thin, and it improves auditing and reporting procedures so that actionable insights find their way to the leaders that need them most. Save time and money on our IT and cloud services and secure your organization with leading end-to-end infrastructure solutions by calling Razor Technology today at 866-797-3282, 866-797-3282, or visit them online at razor-tech.com. That's razor-tech.com.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood days.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES, Eagles.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for hanging out with us.
What did you just say?
I
What
was
the heck was that?
scatting. What's that called when you do that? I'm blanking on the term. Yeah, it is, man. No, you don't. Anyway, that's Derek. I'm Rob. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. All right, so just to reiterate a couple things. The Sixers have brought in another assistant, Rico Hines. He worked previously under Nick Nurse. He's jumped around a little bit. He's been a coach for about 15 plus years, Derek. He was started his coaching career off under Don Nelson back in the day with the Warriors. Then he moved to college for a little while with Steve Lavin at St. John's. Then he went back to the NBA as an assistant on the Kings and later the Raptors. Hines was an assistant coach in the G League for the Sacramento affiliate. So was Bobby Jackson, who came over here previously. He's also the guy who runs a lot of the NBA Summer League stuff in Los Angeles at UCLA. That's where he played his college ball. And they call them the Rico Hines runs. So every summer that you see Kevin Durant and some of the, the big names there, that's where he kind of runs things and coaches them up too. I mean, you can see him in some of the clips coaching these guys up. He's known as a developmental type of coach, and he's known as someone who is very good as well with the X's and the O's. So, Nick Nurse bringing in guys who he's comfortable with. No surprise there. And Rico Hines is one of them.
All right. All looks good on paper. Now you got to implement the method. Okay. I mean, you had to go in some direction, right? You got the coach everybody wanted in Nick Nurse. He's bringing in his people. They're all of one accord, same mindset, same philosophies. All right. Now let's see you apply it with this collection of players. Why are you smirking?
The comment from Tone in the chat where he says, "Nah, that wasn't scatting. I don't know what that was." He's
You're right, Tone. I don't know how to describe it, Tone, but
yeah, exactly.
You're right.
All right. So a couple other things. This is pretty cool. The Oakland A's, they're hot right now, Derek. They've won 7 in a row. which is incredible. We thought they were going to go down as the worst team maybe in the history of baseball, but they've won 7 straight. They're also very close to being sold to Vegas.
Yep.
And last night, their fans held what they called a reverse boycott. So 27,000 people showed up to the Oakland Coliseum where they play their games. They generally draw about 8. So just to tell you, they're over 3 times what they usually get there.
Yep. And
it was a form of a protest. They had T-shirts made up. They're basically trying to say, look, it's not us. It's ownership. 2019, we had all these great players and you stripped us down again. And now we're left with this and we're stuck in this crappy stadium and blah, 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 blah. And here we go. And they did send a bit of a message. The only problem is on the same day when this happened, Las Vegas approved a $380 million public money, $380 million worth of money for public funding for a Las Vegas ballpark. So all those efforts may be for naught, unfortunately.
Yeah, the Senate, the Nevada Senate voted 13-8 in favor of approving this money. Now it moves on to the Assembly. It seems like a foregone conclusion that Vegas is now going to steal the football team as well as the baseball team. When you think about the history of football and baseball in Oakland, there's a lot of pride. There have been Super Bowl champions there. There have been World Series champions there. You go back to the 70s, Oakland was a dominant baseball team. A lot of people still live on that, when they had all that talented team there. And, they've had some decent teams since then. And now you're just going to gut that entire Bay Area of their 2 pro teams, their outlets. But I think the fan base is so frustrated. At one point in the game last night, when something happened positive for the A's, there was complete silence. Everybody stood up. There was complete silence. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, the chants began to rain down, sell the team, sell the team. That's frustration at its finest. You're right, Jim. Eckersley and all those guys. Yep, Canseco. They had unbelievable teams back then. That's what the fan base is. As much as they love their sports, sell the team. I think fans are right now more intrigued about making a drive over to Vegas to watch their team in an environment where the city will embrace and appreciate them than they are in terms of going out to the old Oakland Coliseum and watching the teams there perform. When you think about what the Raiders had been in Oakland the last few years, bottom barrel, the A's, bottom barrel. Now move them into a new environment. And a lot of people will look at it, hey, now we got a reason to go to Vegas for a quick weekend. We can couple, gambling, nightlife, shows, and see some football. Now it's going to be an expensive weekend, no question about that. But still, it'll get a fan base. There's a lot of people from where my wife is from in Southern California that are that were Oakland Raider fans and are still Raider fans. They make the 6-hour drive from Southern California to Vegas to see them play. So the Raiders fan base and the A's fan base will follow them to Vegas. No question about that. Yeah. And you know what, Oakland? Because you don't want to pony up and get your teams new stadiums, you got what you deserved.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the fans are the ones who get it. All right. This was pretty cool. We mentioned that Vegas wins the Stanley Cup last night, but
Vegas again. Another Vegas team.
There you go. But the Florida Panthers lost. But they went down fighting. Their defenseman, Aaron Ekblad.
Yep.
Listen to this, Derek. This is during the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yep.
Broke a foot, dislocated his shoulder twice, tore his oblique, only missed 1 game.
Yep.
Okay. Like, how? How does that happen?
Dude,
he broke his foot in the opening series.
Do you think that take the shoulder for example, you dislocated it twice. When you dislocate it once, it makes it weaker and takes a long time for it to properly heal. He popped it out of place twice, and he's out there taking blindside hits and delivering blows every game. And you're playing with a shoulder in a harness, and then you injure your oblique. Dude, we put football players on a pedestal for their toughness. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, but hockey players are tougher than football.
Yeah, they're man.
I mean, think about it. How many times have we seen a hockey player take a shot to the mouth, lose a tooth, go in the locker room during a game, get stitched up, come back out and play? Take a shot to the cheek, and you see them, your blood just gushing to the neck, blood just gushing. They go get stitched up, come back out and play. You do that to a football player, they're on the IR for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it. I honestly don't know how they do it. It's
don't
beyond belief. Well, even like up until the last minute, it was questionable whether or not Matthew Tkachuk was going to play in Game 5. He broke his sternum in the previous game.
Yes.
Like, how is that even a question of whether I don't know. I don't know how these guys do it. The pain
I don't
tolerance.
either, man. Hockey players are a different breed mentally compared to football players.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. All right, John Rahm. He's kind of speaking the same language. A lot of PGA players are speaking here. They're angry that they sort of took the high road here when they could have cashed checks because of, with LIV, and they stayed true to it. And now the LIV players are coming back, and they're all left sort of wondering, like, why did we do this? If our management is going to cave, why didn't we just cave? And they feel like they weren't communicated to very well either, Derek. That's the other thing. Like a lot of these guys found out the same way you and I found out, through Twitter, through just, watching ESPN, whatever the case may be. So they're particularly unhappy about that. So this can be awkward, man, when these folks all get together here.
Well, the players they jumped and went to LIV because of the big money guaranteed. They got the money guaranteed, got that oil money. Now they're coming back to the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
And I don't blame the PGA Tour players who stood up for the PGA, refused to buckle and just take the money and run. And now basically they feel they've been betrayed. And I don't blame them. These are the same guys who could have gone over to LIV and made way more money in a fewer amount of tournaments than they're ever going to make in their careers.
Easily.
And they stood pat because of loyalty. And this is what the PGA did to them. And there's not a guarantee. A lot of them are going to keep their PGA cards when those big name players come back.
That's the problem. It's not the big boys. It's not John Rahm. It's not Rory McIlroy. Those guys are fine. It's the borderline guys who are just trying to make a living.
Yeah.
That's all they're trying to do. They're trying to feed their families, who are probably going to get the boot. And I hope there's some kind of, I don't know, method, alternative. Maybe they expand it a little bit. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to play out, but it ain't good. It ain't good.
Well,
I can tell you that.
I would hope they would expand it to allow these guys as a thank you for your loyalty to maintain their PGA cards. But as we know, when it comes to money and business, Rob, there's no such thing as loyalty.
No.
The loyalty only exists as far as the dollar can take you.
Yep. It is wild. It is wild. All right. Let's do some birthdays. You want to do some birthdays, D-Gun?
Birthdays.
All right, let's do it. All right. Donald Trump is 77 years old. You may have heard of him. He's been in the news a little bit lately.
Never heard of the guy.
Over the last several years. He is 77. Che Guevara, I think, there's people who back him. There's people that revile him. I would say if you do your own research on him, you'll find out what that guy was really all about. But whatever. He was born on this day, 1928. Lucy Hale, the actress, is 34 years old.
Yep.
Today. Steffi Graf, the great tennis player, now married to Andre Agassi. She is 54 today. Is Steffi Graf.
22 Grand Slam titles, third most all time among women's tennis players. Plus, she's won Olympic gold also.
Yeah, she was not good. She was great. I mean, she was a great player. She was tough, strong. Will Patton. Will Patton is 69 years old. He's been in a lot of stuff, but among other things, he played in remember the Titans?
Bill Yost.
He was the guy who became the assistant, right, to Denzel. Yeah.
He was Bill Yost, played
Bill
that
Yost.
role, the assistant.
Yep.
They butted heads initially, but then got on the same page in the end.
Right on. Yep. He is 69. Burl Ives, the old actor and singer. He's still a guy, if you watch some of the Christmas stuff, the animated stuff from back in the day, he does a lot of the voiceover and animation and narrating and all that stuff. He was born in 1909, Burl Ives.
He will forever be etched in my mind as the narrating voice for the 1964 classic Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Yep, that's him. So if you're ever sitting at home like, oh, who's that folksy country kind of dude? That's him.
Yes. He was a good singer also.
He was. He had a very great dual career as an actor and a singer. Boy George is 62 today. Culture
Your
Club
number one
fame.
favorite singer.
He's your number one. He's your guy.
No, I said your number one favorite singer.
You said yours. All right, good for you. 1811, Harriet Beecher Stowe was born. Certainly a big impact on our world and our society. Harriet Beecher Stowe.
Do you remember what her claim to fame was?
Which was? Well, I don't know. No,
she's the one who wrote the book Uncle Tom's Cabin.
She was Uncle Tom's Cabin. That's
she was
right.
So against slavery. She wrote. Her family egged her on to write a book to tell the story of slavery, and she gave such a vivid description of just how horrible slavery was. And the book is still a classic today.
It's still assigned reading, and rightfully so, in a lot of schools.
Yes.
And yeah, you're right. Among other things, I mean, one of the great authors, abolitionist. Yeah, Uncle Tom's Cabin came out in 1852. Derek, 1852.
Yes.
Incredible. All right. Beyond Harriet, we have Yasmine Bleeth. How do we go from Harriet Beecher Stowe to Yasmine Bleeth of Baywatch fame? But that's how we do it on the movies or on the birthdays.
Would you consider strong?
Very back in the day. I don't know about now, but yes, extremely. 55 years old. Marla Gibbs. Now, I didn't realize that she's still alive. God bless her.
I didn't either.
Man, she was Florence from the Jeffersons. She was in 222 and a bunch of other stuff, but good for her, man. Still with us.
92 years old.
She's got to be the only one from the cast, right? Of the around.
I believe so.
Because even Lionel is passed away.
The original Lionel?
Yeah, the original Lionel passed away.
Wow.
Yeah. That's crazy, right? 227. I said 222. Jalen Smith, was a Cowboy linebacker, 28 years old. A shame he got hurt in a bowl game. It was never the same after that. Cara Kilmer, who is an actress on Chicago Fire, is 35 today.
Yep.
Actor Gene Barry was born on this day in 1919. Sammy Watkins, 30 years old.
Speaking of Gene Barry, did you know he was in the original War of the Worlds that came out in 1955? And then he was in the remake that came out in 2005. He played a grandfather in the remake in 2005.
No, that's great. Gene
And
Barry knowledge.
Yeah.
Good work. Sammy Watkins is 30. RJ Barrett of the Knicks is 23. Eric Heiden, the great speed skater, is 65 today.
I interviewed him several times. He was from the great city of Madison, Wisconsin.
What a run he had, man, in the 80s. Just incredible. Absolutely.
He won 5 gold medals in the 80 Olympics. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Bruce Bowen. For one time, he was a Sixer for a minute. Yeah, he's 52 years old today. Don Newcomb, the great Don Newcomb, pitcher for the Dodgers, one of the guys who helped break some color barriers back in the day. He was born in 1926. Was Don Newcomb? You got any other birthdays? If not, we'll jump to the movies.
You got Faison Love, who played the movie Friday. Remember, he was the one that was in the car. Don't play with my money, Smokey. It's the principality.
He's a large human being. Yes.
Dude, he was even funnier in the Real House. Do you ever watch the show Real Husbands of Hollywood with Kevin Hart? Dude, that show, they took it out of syndicate off of production. Oh. Dude, if you ever get to watch the syndicated show, you got to watch it. That show is ridiculously funny.
I'll have to check that out. Okay.
Yeah, it's called The Real Husbands of Hollywood.
Okay.
He's 55. Dorothy McGuire, who was born in 1916. She was famous for the movie A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, one of the old classics. Sam Wanamaker, who played in the movie The Spy Who Came In From the Coal and those magnificent men in their flying machines, was born in 1919.
Okay.
Now, I know you know your music. You remember Junior Walker and the All-Stars.
Oh, my God. Yes.
Yeah.
It's Junior's birthday today?
Junior was born on this day in 1931.
Junior's a senior now, I think. Yeah. Yes.
Remember Ben Davison, the old Oakland Raider?
Yeah.
He used to play the commercial with John Madden.
He was great in those, yeah.
He was
big mustache.
Miller Lite commercials with a deep voice.
Yep.
He was born on this day in 1940.
Okay.
Cesar Ruiz, who was drafted by the New Orleans Saints, still with the Saints offensive guard.
He's a Camden kid. Yep.
Yep, 24. Frank Clark, who left Kansas City, went to Denver, is 30.
Okay.
Miami Heat guard Gabe Vincent is 27.
He's a free agent too. Yeah.
The great Sam Perkins, who won a national title with
North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. And he played in the NBA 17 seasons.
Yeah, Sam hung around.
Is 60. He was the 4th overall pick by Dallas. He's 62 today.
Okay.
Laquan Treadwell, who's with the Ravens right now, is 28. Sixers own Paul Reed is 24 today.
Yep, B-ball Paul.
And former NFL quarterback Vince Evans is 68 today.
So Vince played a long time too.
He did.
Played a long time. All right, good. Movies. Born Identity.
Yes.
2002, great one.
Yes, sir.
I'll watch those remakes too. I'm very good. Cable Guy. It's sort of a different role for Jim Carrey, kind of a darker sort of role with Ben Stiller. 1996. Shaft, the Samuel L. Shaft, not the original from back in the day.
With Richard Roundtree. Yep.
Richard Roundtree. Men in Black. This was another remake. This was international.
Yep.
From 2019. Not like the others.
No.
Not even close, really. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with Kevin Costner, 1991.
That was good.
It was good. Stealing Beauty, pretty solid, 1996. I didn't see it. I think it was a Netflix direct release murder mystery with Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston. I didn't see that one.
That was pretty cute.
Was it? Yeah, I didn't catch it. But I know they made a couple since, like a couple follow-up sort of things together. That's all I have. That's all I have with the movies. How about you?
You have Scooby-Doo from 2002.
Right.
And Man of Steel from 2013 with
One
the
of the,
Superman movie.
Superman movies. Okay.
Yep, that's it.
That's it. That is it. All right. So the Phillies tonight, Derek, they look to make it now 9 of 11 is what they're looking to do. So the way this thing sets up from a pitching standpoint, the guy they're facing tonight actually is pretty darn good. So there is no question about it. All eyes, in tonight's game are going to be on Ranger Suarez. So he's going to have to deliver against Merrill Kelly, who's good. You get Nola tomorrow. So we'll see what you get. You just hold your breath with him. He goes tomorrow, and that's an afternoon game. And then they go to Oakland after that. So that's where things are with the Phillies. And again, we as we tell you, we hear anything Sixers wise, coaching or whatever, we'll update you on that. Eagles wise, we're in that period of time. We'll keep examining the birds and keep cracking out great guests for you every single time. We do appreciate our producer, Tone, DeShields. Tone, thank you. Thank you to everybody in the chat section for hanging out with us and doing your thing there. We do appreciate it. Everybody streaming, everybody listening. All right, so hang on. Don't go anywhere. You have the National Football Show coming up with Dan Cilio for the next 3 hours, and Derek and I are back tomorrow at the same time. So everybody have a great, great rest of your Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.